that comes out of that process.
Oh boy, my favorite show. Boring. We need to be mad. We need to be angry. We're thinking too much around here, guys. How dare you? That is so cool. That is so fun. Oh my god, dude. That's so big, dude. We gotta have a better ground game to overpower the corporate media structure and the propaganda. I'm right on the polling. I'm right on that. That's undisputed in my mind. That's undisputed in my mind. Politics is more complicated than that. Waging political capital in an effective way. Boring. Politics is more complicated than that. That is so cool. That is so fun. Oh boy, my favorite show. Boring. We need to be mad. We need to be angry. We're thinking too much around here, guys. How dare you? That is so cool. That is so fun. Oh my god, dude. That's so big, dude. We gotta have a better ground game to overpower the corporate media structure and the propaganda. I'm right on the polling. I'm right on that. That's undisputed in my mind. That's undisputed in my mind. Politics is more complicated than that. Waging political capital in an effective way. Boring. Politics is more complicated than that. That is so cool. That is so fun. Oh boy, my favorite show. Boring. We need to be mad. We need to be angry. We're thinking too much around here, guys. How dare you? That is so cool. That is so fun. Oh my god, dude. That's so big, dude. We gotta have a better ground game to overpower the corporate media structure and the propaganda. I'm right on the polling. I'm right on that. That's undisputed in my mind. That's undisputed in my mind. Politics is more complicated than that. Waging political capital in an effective way. Boring. Politics is more complicated than that. That is so cool. That is so fun. Oh boy, my favorite show. Boring. We need to be mad. We need to be angry. We're thinking too much around here, guys. How dare you? That is so cool. That is so fun. Oh my god, dude. That's so big, dude. We gotta have a better ground game to overpower the corporate media structure and the propaganda. Oh boy, my favorite show. Boring. We need to be mad. We need to be angry. We're thinking too much around here, guys. How dare you? That is so cool. That is so fun. Oh my god, dude. That's so big, dude. We gotta have a better ground game to overpower the corporate media structure and the propaganda. I'm right on the polling. I'm right on that. That's undisputed in my mind. That's undisputed in my mind. Politics is more complicated than that. Waging political capital in an effective way. Boring. Politics is more complicated than that. That is so cool. That is so fun. Oh boy, my favorite show. Shout out to Tom McDonald. I love him. Boring. We need to be mad. We need to be angry. Spencer, hello. Thank you for your extremely $2 contribution of beta particles. We're thinking too much around here, guys. How dare you? That better be what it is. I don't know. I heard a lot about it. One clip I saw made me kind of upset. It was Vaush, and I brought this up before. He talks an awful lot about his channel size, his numbers, and like his personal profit, and I don't like that. At one point, he said like, everybody's attacking me. I'm under attack. I'm not even making money doing this. And I don't like that. I don't like how much he does it. Like every once in a while. And he said that one thing to Destiny when he said he doesn't take advertisers because it's not good for his brand. He just says stuff like that all the time. And it makes me feel really weird whenever he does. Cuz I'm like, you know, it always makes you always question what people's motives are when they do certain things. And I think he has mostly good intentions with what he does, but you never know. What's up, Tristan? Lining up some Tom McDonald debates before I do this quick review of this thing. Whatever this is. I spelled Destiny wrong. Here, Destiny. There you go. This one person said to me, this Tom McDonald fan, he said, let's see. I would love to debate you. I am a leftist who hates identity politics. You are more reasonable than Vaush. I'll give you that. My political views tend to lean left, but he hates identity politics, SJWs. One of his main theories is a leftist candidate would win any election because Americans do support left policies. The only issue is that people on the left care about social issues and civil liberties. If we stop caring about that so much and stop talking about that so much, then apparently we will have a revolution. So that's this person that wants to debate me. I think they have a YouTube channel with like 1,000 subscribers too. This person also thinks Tom McDonald is amazing because if you watch his videos, a lot of his viewpoints lean left. He made a song where he bashed Donald Trump. He made an anti-gun song. So this person is like a populist. Most people were going at Vaush, and he was insanely bad faith. You wrote better. Oh, yeah, I forgot. You're a rapper. Vaush was literally the "Why are you so obsessed with me" meme. Guess so. You watched Dylan review this debate yesterday. He didn't like how it was moderated. Moderate. That means moderate, right? Ugh. Tired. Shout out to DT above me. Here. Okay, that looks good. Title a song after Tucker Carlson. Maybe I should do that. I should diss right-wing political figures. Here, I gotta turn these chats on. Nobody's ever on Twitch. So that's good. Discord. That. YouTube chat. I need to fix this quick. Oh, wait. It's playing. Where is after coming up? Skip teasers. Cool. Okay, so that's set up. I need to fix the chat box. Properties. URL. You are a loser. Pop out chat. Copy URL. Paste URL. There you are. Okay, I'm gonna take this off. This panel is a seminar. Ooh, clashing egos. I love it. Remove. I'm gonna put a smaller drop likes. Drop likes if you love Tom McDonald. If you Oh wait. There you go. Replace. Okay. Drop likes if Tom McDonald. Destiny and Vaush are both angry at each other. Nothing but a personal fight. The rest of the panel is spent the time trying to got you, Vaush. Okay, I'm gonna shut my door quick and then begin this process. 1 second. They should bring me on a panel. I should be on panels. Nobody invites me to panels. It's the same freaking 5 people. Oh, actually, Hans. Hans is awesome. But other than Hans, nobody invites me anywhere. Meanies. Keep on recycling the same bad takes every week when I could just give my bad takes instead. My bad takes are better than their bad takes, okay? Truth. Ugh. Okay, so I have no side in this. Literally, I have no side. Destiny, Vaush. I mean, Destiny has platformed rural progressive politics, so maybe he has the upper hand in my mind, but not really. Oh, wait. I can't hear. Oh, no. Oh, wait. Do I have my volume all the way
For
down?
instance,
Ah!
it doesn't matter.
My bad. 1 second. I made a oopsie. I made a big oopsie. I had my volume adjuster all the way down. Okay, let's restart this. 100%.
We moved on to whether the Republican Party within America
Is that good noise? Good sound right there? I'm looking for you in the chat boxes, the chat room. I'm gonna use Boomer Talk. Anybody, I mean, I'm not old. But like, anybody ever use Boomer Talk? You know the DS chat? What was it called? Picto chat, where you can like text back and forth between DSs over like Bluetooth or whatever that connection was. Does anybody remember that? Those were the days. After class, hey, go in my Picto chat room. Let's color pictures and send them to each other. Oh, fascism is okay, cool. Okay. Like I said, I have no side in this. Vaush versus Destiny. Let's be entertained.
Is a fascist. Is fascist sympathetic, and we moved on to whether the Republican Party within America is a fascist. Is fascist sympathetic in any case.
Yeah. Obviously, I can't speak on American politics. I'm from New Zealand, so I'm not nearly as educated as you guys would be on that sort of thing. But I mean, if we're talking about, I feel like I like that we got a definition of fascism is what we're talking about here. That's not exactly how I put it in my mind, but that doesn't matter. But there's always, if you start to restrict any kind of speech by law, then there's always my brain's scared. Sorry. There's always a risk of then the power changing hands and then different things becoming obviously illegal. And if you set a precedent for making certain words, phrases,
She is basically talking about the change of hands in government. Like, for example, for our state's governor, there are debates between Democrats and Republicans on how much power the governor should have. Right now, we have a Democratic governor, so a lot of Democrats want to give the governor more power, but we might not give him power because we know a Republican is going to win in the future. So even if we give our Democratic governor more power right now, if a Republican wins, they are going to have more power. So that is basically what she's talking about.
things like that, punishable by law, then they can change very, very quickly. Obviously, I don't want hate speech. I don't want people being mean to each other and being hateful towards each other. But I think that there's a lot of importance in social punishment. You know, it's like, yeah, people should be fired if they are like, you know, kill all of these certain groups of people. I think that people have their right to not want to employ people who have those sort of beliefs. And I think that that is a form of social punishment that does not need to be regulated by law.
Isn't the question if the Republican Party is fascist or not? I would say around 1/3 of their current elected politicians are probably ultra nationalist at the very least, anti-democratic at the very least. Fascist is a really heavy label. There's a guy from Pennsylvania in our state legislature. His name is Doug Mastriano. He is a friendly fascist, 100% anti-democratic, authoritarian, ultra national, like all that stuff. But like as far as the Republican Party goes, it's mostly people who are okay with fascism. It's not exactly people who are propagating that ideology,
in my opinion.
Thanks so much. All right, Katarana. Then we'll go to Destiny.
Yeah, I just don't entirely understand some of the hang up on like whether or not or like why it's so contentious to go ahead and prescribe the idea that like some people in the Republican Party, even if they don't knowingly subscribe to the tenets of fascism, could still be fascist. You can do a racism without being racist. You could do a fascism without being a fascist. And some people can be a fascist without knowing they are a fascist. It's not that crazy of a point. So if people are going ahead and passing legislation or going ahead and advocating for ideas that are fascist in nature, it doesn't matter what the intent is. At the end of the day, what it ends up being done to society still ends up being the same end goal. Same thing goes for when we talk about like racist legislation.
but if you remove somebody who is naturally and organically a fascist, then fascist elements will be removed from the party. But if you have an entire party of Mitt Romneys, you're not going to have anti-democratic movement. That isn't exactly true. I know what she is saying here, but it doesn't really play out that way.
Legislation, like it doesn't matter what anybody's intent is ever, because if it ends up causing net harm, who gives a fuck? So like I just don't entirely
In
understand.
a democratic sense, intent really does play a role. It does play a role. If you take Donald Trump out of the party, you don't have the same Republican Party. You have the old neocon, boring, they still respect elections. They respect the rule of governing. They're not isolationist. So she is pretty wrong, actually.
And like why like there needs to be like such contention on like, is everybody that voted for Trump fascist? I don't know, but they did a fascism by doing it. Like that's it. If you did a fascism, the end. It's not that crazy to say.
Okay, so we'll move over to Destiny, but two things. First of all, if you're enjoying this content, hit the follow button. Look what I bring you. I bring you content all the goddamn time. Hit the goddamn follow button and make sure notifications are on. So much content happens here. And these situations don't happen in any other channel. Hit the fucking follow button. And then secondly, I'll say thank you, Destiny. Like, you were I'm sure you were just as naked as Vaush, but you said, I'm going to put on clothes for Prime. I appreciate that. So,
By the way, gamer move right here by Destiny. He sees Vaush is on this panel, and he's like, you know what? Vaush wants to avoid me, which, by the way, Vaush never stopped talking about Destiny after he said he was going to. But, you know, Vaush wants to avoid me. Guess what? I'm going on this panel. If he leaves right away, he looks terrible. He's not going to take that optic loss. I'm going to force a debate. Good move, Destiny.
Please take it away.
I don't know why. I think that labeling people as fascist and calling them fascist is just a way to signal to your community that you are like on your ideological camp, and then you can shit on other people that are outside of your ideological camp. It's a brainless in-group, out-group thing. Anybody that does it is wasting everybody's time. It doesn't even make sense to condemn somebody for doing something that is fascist because it implies that every single fascist thing is bad. It's like saying we shouldn't drink water because Hitler drank water. There are plenty of quote-unquote fascist policies that a lot of people across all sides of the political spectrum would agree with. For instance, the rejection of immigrants into your economy to protect native wages is something that people on the far left, like Bernie Sanders, have supported. And it's also something that fascists would consider good as well. The massive.
Okay, the difference is if Bernie Sanders literally wants to do it to protect wages, and that is the main reason, which it doesn't play out that way all the time. A lot of times, old union members were pretty like xenophobic and stuff. But if that is Bernie's intent with that, it's not the same as Donald Trump, who is talking about purely cultural reasons for like denying immigration, and he's actively calling immigrants bad, evil, aggressive people. He's calling immigrants people who are going to come and rape our daughters and all that stuff. They are aggressive. They're not really, you know, they're not civilized like we are. That is far different. Those are two very different brands of populism.
Protection of your economy.
And all populism is not fascism, by the way.
Bernie Sanders have supported, and it's also something that fascists would consider good as well. The massive protection of your economy, the increasing of tariffs, and putting big trade embargoes or barriers from other countries so you can do like made in America shit, that would be a fascist policy, and people on the left would probably support that policy as well. They're like this obsession with like labeling things as fascist and saying that it's bad and all.
Some populists on the left would. Bernie Sanders used to be very anti-immigrant. That is true. And like Kyle Kulinski and Crystal Ball, these populists on the left are pretty isolationist, which would be another like fascistic policy. You can say they are like Destiny isn't wrong when he says that the populist left and populist right often overlap, and the populist left is often dumb in, you know, they give too much power to the populist right, or whatever you want to use, whatever words you want to use for that. So he is wrong and right, in my opinion.
All of it is bad. It's just so mind-rottingly fucking stupid, and it's like a meta-narrative or a meta-conversation that people have so that they can avoid having an actual conversation about any particular policy whatsoever.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Wait,
Sure.
what? I'm sorry. Literally, what? Like, I totally get that there are some people that
And
are
by
going.
the way, Bernie Sanders might be saying things about immigration to say, hey, we should not be letting people come over the border, but we should have a legal immigration system. Because if we get people working within our system and you get immigrants in unions, then that can be good for all workers. If you let people come in illegally and work without being citizens or without paying taxes, that can be a really big loss in America. So he might be leaning that direction with that policy. Although Destiny wants to compare it to the fascist policy, and that's a policy Destiny would agree with. I know he says he's idealistically open borders, but practically speaking, isn't he for clean legal immigration and basically legalizing everybody who's in America already? Because that's my stance. I think we should have a really strong like legal process that isn't going to take 10 years. And also anybody who is working here currently, it makes a lot more sense to give them a quick path to legalization. Economically, it makes sense for civics and all that stuff.
Going ahead and giving this label things willy-nilly, just like the way some people go ahead and say everything that's like left of like Pelosi is an SJW, and just like everything that like is a little bit like everything's racist.
No,
Sure,
you can't say outcomes are the same. Even denying immigrants, the Biden administration used the exact same rhetoric as Trump today. Remember when Kamala went up and she said to the Guatemalan immigrants or whatever, or the people that were coming from Guatemala, because the U.S. is working with them to make sure people don't try to migrate to America. She said, don't come here. Do not come here. That is far different from Trump, who would just like help hold people captive, not allow them to go through the asylum process. They used the same rhetoric. The Biden admin and Trump admin used a lot of the same rhetoric when it comes to the border. If you say they have the same immigration policy, you're just dead wrong. So you can't say the outcomes are the same for all these things.
but like on
There
Twitter,
is a responsible way to use like populist rhetoric. As long as you don't make immigrants the enemy, then it's probably not going to be that bad. It's not the same as Trump making immigrants the enemy that we need to be afraid of, or our workers are going to die. That's much different.
and just like everything that like is a little bit like like everything's racist, sure, but like on Twitter. But like at the end of the day, like even if it is a label that people are giving stupidly, doesn't mean that at sometimes it's not a label that is accurate. That can go with
Problem is
anything.
that-
Like
the problem is that that is actually exactly what happens, is that once a label is used and abused so much, it quickly descends into meaninglessness. And that is what has happened with the term fascism. I would literally bet my left arm that the vast majority of people, probably the majority of people on this very call that use the term fascism as a pejorative, don't actually know what the fuck fascism is. It is literally just a label that we give to people that we
Limited
think
doesn't know what fascism is
No, wait,
either.
wait, hold on. I do
Clearly.
think it's
Fascism grew as an anti-liberal ideology. So anti-liberal meant democratic formats. Fascists are very against democracy. They're very against civil rights. They are usually ultra nationalists. They focus on protecting some sort of like identity. That's usually what a fascist is. They're authoritarian. They don't respect the rules of how government is supposed to operate in general. They want power. They are power hungry, and they divide and conquer. There's a lot of characteristics of them. So you can't say everybody that does fascistic policies is a fascist. Like George Bush did a lot of really bad fascistic stuff, but he wasn't a fascist. If he lost an election, he probably wouldn't have, like Trump, for example, he wouldn't have rejected it completely. That's why you see people like Mitt Romney and Bush being so adverse, or like Cheney being so adverse to Trump, because they are not fascist. They respect the way the game is supposed to be played. But you can sort of use that to pick out people who are willing to dip into that pot if they need to stay on the Trump train.
really funny. Wait, really quick. I
Okay,
do
wait,
think
hold
it's
on.
funny.
I'm so curious. Wait, what is Neo Geo or whatever? What do you think fascism is? Let's hear it.
From tariff, sorry,
That's
fascist
no,
I want to
policy.
hear it. I want to hear it. She made fun of me. What do you think? What do you think fascism
No,
is?
no, it's a good question. But
Dude, if we're gonna call like tariffs a fascist policy, it depends how they are implemented as well. Like you can oh my god, dude. Maybe we should not use labels. Let's stop, dude. It's too much.
in this situation, it has to do.
We should just like talk about things descriptively. We shouldn't just put labels on them, because if we're gonna call every single, there is a way to do so many policies in a fascistic way. Like you can't just go down the list and say this is a fascist policy, because there's so much other context you need leading up to that.
I used to call George W. Bush a fascist, but I was incorrect because I learned, what fascism is.
What is
And he
fascism?
wasn't a fascist because he didn't have a following in the cult. Like at minimum, it has to be there's a charismatic leader, and their followers do whatever they tell them. It's like a cult.
No.
Okay, so this is exactly what I'm
Stop
talking
yelling.
about.
Well,
Okay?
that's a
But, like-
cult of personality. That is part of a fascist leader, usually a demagogue of any sort. They usually have a cult of personality. Bernie had somewhat of one, but his slogan was "Not me, us." Like I said, there are like liberal, responsible populists, or like liberals that use populist rhetoric, and then there are people who actively hate the system. And I'm gonna have like a debate with a layman soon about this. Like Bernie Sanders, his disdain with the system is corrupting influences in the system. He aimed everything at big money. He didn't attack the way government operates. He didn't attack like our democratic process. He never said these elections are fake. He never said anything like that. He said outside influences need to stop being, big money needs to get out of politics. That is much different. That is not fascistic. That is not irresponsible populism. It can be. I mean, populism is a dangerous weapon, as I always say, but that's a totally different ballgame.
This is why we need. This is why we
Sorry.
need
No,
to stop
but
using
that's
the
the
word
very
fascist.
minimum.
Oh my
No,
god.
I appreciate the
okay,
fact.
so this is what
I
I just hold on. I appreciate the fact.
And
Hold
it's
on, wait.
democratic.
Vaush, go ahead.
I appreciate the fact that Destiny is against unproductive, divisive discourse. So he came in here and spent 2 minutes complaining that nobody but him knew what the definition of fascism was.
That's, I
And now
literally
tariffs-
said, stop
hold
using
on,
it. I'm not
hold
trying
on.
to argue. I'm saying stop using the
One
term
person,
and just talk about
one
the
person at a
policies.
time. One person at a time. So rather than adding any
I agree
nuance of
with Destiny.
clarification to the conversation, he came in here in an effort
hate
to virtue
labels.
signal against the lefties
Oh,
he
for
hates so
fuck's
much.
sake, all this
So,
dumb
Who is
shit.
virtue
regardless,
signaling?
Vaush looks really bad here because Destiny didn't go deep. He does hate the left too much. Destiny does do that, but Vaush came out way too aggressive. This is such a bad rhetorical tactic or whatever the hell Vaush says about his speech. You don't bring up a bunch of things attacking somebody who didn't give justification in this conversation. In order for Vaush to look good, you would literally need to be obsessed with their relationship to even know what Vaush is talking about right now. To anybody else that doesn't obsess over this like Vaush Destiny dynamic, he looks kind of crazy here.
Saying
with-
that nobody knows what
Hold
fascism
on,
means.
we're
So
not-
instead of
we're not
using
done yet.
stop having a meta conversation about
We're
me.
not-
Okay,
we're not
please
done
talk
yet.
about it.
Okay, okay. Here's what might
Let
happen.
him finish the point
Hold
before we get
on.
mad.
Hold on. Here's what might happen. I might just take this to the private room and we'll just have a few people.
No, don't do that.
If I do,
Cringe.
okay, fine.
No,
I'm just saying.
Oh.
Look, well, then one
Let
at a
everything
fucking time.
take time,
Then shut
no.
up.
Wait,
one at
I
a
wasn't
time.
finished with my
Vaush, go
salient
ahead.
point. Yeah. So anyway, the argument that calling things fascist is bad is dumb because tariffs and other things some fascists may agree with are fascist policies is pretty self-evidently ridiculous. Fascists may agree with policies that are meant to make drinking water clean. That wouldn't make those fascist policies. You could argue then, like, what is the line at which point you could call a policy fascist? There is certainly a blurry line there. I mean, at what point does protectionism become ethno-supremacy?
Your line's
I
not
think that
blurry at
what-
all. You think Bush is fascist. I'm
Hold
sure you
on.
think immigration
Wait,
restrictions
does
are
he?
fascist.
Protectionism is purely
I don't
fascist.
think-
Like, absolutely
no,
will
I
be
don't
supported
think-
by fascists. Like,
No, hold on. No, wait, hold on. Something being supported by
No, cringe take by that.
fascists doesn't make it fascist inherently.
what makes
Like I
it
said, clean
fascist
drinking.
inherently?
Hold on, clean drinking water is
stop
probably
using
supported by
examples.
everyone.
No, hold on. You're not talking to your
Protectionism
audience.
is something
Say
supported
that
No,
by
just,
Right.
wait, hold on. No,
So
give
you
us a
can't finish
clear
a point because
definition.
he's so
Vaush.
triggered. He's so angry. at
Okay.
me
No,
here.
I'm not angry. You're veering off. Just tell us what
He's
makes
very
it
mad.
Let-
An abstract
policy
without
fascist.
without reference to example. An
Yeah,
abstract.
just
Okay.
make what is it?
Let Vaush finish his thought,
No,
and
let
then
him
we'll
answer.
find
Yeah.
out. Oh,
No,
find out.
Thank you for the compliment, but I am not a better debater than them. I do not have this level of like, I don't have this. Is it confidence or ego? I don't know. I don't have
Finish
that.
the
Find
original
out.
point, no?
Or
Vaush, go
experience,
ahead,
Yeah.
please.
We might eventually get there.
or
Even.
knowledge,
Um,
or
what
anything.
was I talking about? Whether or not
What
a
makes
policy is
a policy
fascist. Oh, yeah.
fascist?
So it's a blurry line, obviously, because
my
there are
God.
policies that are going to be supported by people on any side of the aisle. When you're talking about Republicans, I think that Trump's
Like I said
rejection-
before, the differentiation between fascism and not fascism. If you're actively, organically, telling people by yourself to hate immigrants and that immigrants are dangerous and we need to protect our culture, then that would be a fascist. I would assume you implementing immigration reform would be more fascist because that is the rhetoric leading up to it. The outcomes aren't what we are really talking about. But if you use that rhetoric as you implement the policy, you have to assume the outcomes are going to be fascistic or whatever. You know, if it's like we need to protect our Western civilization and stuff like that.
of the election results and everything that's happened subsequent of that is a very, very,
Without
very
reference to
obvious
example.
indication.
Without reference, I mean, no one will deny those
Without
examples that you bring
reference-
up.
So wait, hold on. You want me to describe where the line is for a fascist policy without using an example? How do you suggest I do that exactly?
You don't understand how to provide a definition of something? You know this is like how the dictionary works, right? Like you can't use the word in the definition. You should be able to give us a clear criteria by which a policy can be evaluated that makes it fascist or not fascist. If you're incredulous, you can't do that without an example. Why would you even try
Yeah,
to
you
do
need
it?
way
Just say
too
you
much
don't have a- or
context.
You don't
So
have
wait,
criteria.
really-
Hold on.
You need so much context to say if a policy is fascist. You might have to debate on each individual point, or you need to at least agree that a person is fascist and that, you know, core is what's motivating them to do a certain policy. It's so convoluted to the point where I think labels really are what would the word be? They just don't make sense in this scenario. It's not pragmatic to approach it in that way.
The reason why is because literally nobody does this. When you're talking about whether or not a given policy is in alignment with a given like ideological line, you would almost always defer to example because there are numerous ways in which those policies can be interpreted, enacted, and informed upon that would determine whether or not they actually adhere to that line. Whether
Sure.
or
I
not
agree
like the
with that.
way
That's
in which
right.
you do or advocate for protectionism can be fascistic. It's possible that the same law passed by Trump or by Bernie Sanders could be more or less fascistic depending on the cultural trends it reinforced. Examples are
absolutely
essential
true.
here.
Yes, no, that what you're saying is true, but what you need to concede, and you won't because you're unwilling to, because it makes it look bad, is that there's going to be a large overlap between all sorts of different policies and all sorts of ideologies.
I have never, not only is that not something I'm willing to
fascists-
concede, I said that right off the bat with the water
fascists-
cleaning example.
Okay, fascists and left-leaning people are going to support protectionism for largely the same reason. They want to protect natives.
That's not
Oh my god, dude. That's such a bad point. They want to protect natives. What aspect of natives are they both trying to protect? What aspect? Is it culture or is it power in the marketplace to organize and demand more from your freaking managers or whatever, so workers have more power? Which reason is it? Saying like we're doing this to protect natives isn't the same for like a Bernie or like versus a Trump.
necessarily the case.
What part of that
Left-leaning
is
is
it?
not
No, wait,
supporting
let him
protectionism.
answer.
Please
No,
stop
wait,
saying
wait, let him answer.
Okay.
What isn't necessarily the case there? Please explain to me the difference.
Lefties have historically supported protectionism, either A, because it's a developing country and they think of it as a way
The
to
U.S. is
develop
not a
it.
developing country. Stop.
Oh,
doing
wait,
this.
hold
Can
on.
the outcomes of blaming immigrants for economic issues make cultural divisions? Sure.
You said lefties. You didn't say American lefties. I'm just being specific and clear with my language. Thank you.
Oh my gosh.
Either because they want. I know he has a problem with the nuance, right?
No, no, it's not about the nuances because you're pivoting. Because
No,
you're
with
talking
hot
about
stuff.
answer
We're
while you're
talking about the United
So,
States.
We're talking about the
being
US.
specific,
Let him
being
finish.
specific with a definition is not what pivoting is. That's not what the word means. You're free to look it up.
No, but he used
historically,
America as an example, and so he would include that.
Historically,
we're talking about George
lefties,
Bush and President Trump. We're
historically,
talking about the U.S.
Yeah, and you can be
Historically-
against illegal immigration. Like I said before, if you want legal immigrants to also join unions, that is different from saying, I don't want people coming in who are not going to be registered in the system, because then companies, guess what? They can just hire undocumented workers for under minimum wage instead of paying us.
Lefties have supported protectionism either because it allows the development of a robust internal economy not dependent on like foreign exports, or B, as is the case with Bernie Sanders, because they believe, and I disagree with this, that it would be in support of domestic workers. Fascists typically support protectionism in an ethnic sense. They're not actually interested in the preferentiality of the workers, which is why they aren't pro-worker. Their policies are broadly not pro-worker. They don't support workers holistically. They're protectionists as long as it allows them to maintain national and ethnic lines. And that's one of the reasons why that same
Yes, fascists use class conflict and class issues as a masquerade to cover up their true cultural conflicts that they're trying to win.
policy pushed by Sanders and by Trump might be
No.
totally different in whether or not I'd call it fascist.
It in a way it can push national ethic lines, but the most important part is the idea of achieving autarky, the idea of a state that is completely self-sufficient. That's the big reason
That's
why they
different from
support
protecting workers.
It can be or it couldn't be. It depends. But the point is that people support
Context
left-leaning
matters.
people and fascists support these things in order to protect Native workers. Now,
For
whether you
different
can say
reasons,
that,
right? Well, not to protect Native workers, to protect
I mean,
the
like
state
for
or the
different, if you want
ethnicity
to
of
get like
fascist.
super deep
Workers
into
of
the
the
reason, sure.
United
I'm just saying that's a big
Workers of the
difference.
United
I'm just saying that large.
What I don't like about what Destiny is doing here is he rejected using labels, which I agree with, but then he dipped right back into it, right? He just dipped right back into saying like, hey, both of these policies are fascistic. Why not just talk about the policies and what they might end up doing? Because if you did do it layer by layer, then he can make the argument like both of these policies, instead of saying, oh, they both want to benefit natives, very broad, it doesn't really hit the right points. He can bring it back to, hey, what are these policies going to do layer by layer? What are the outcomes going to be? The outcome of Trump demanding less immigration and Bernie Sanders demanding less immigration. What are the two different outcomes of those two different people demanding those policies? Are the policies even going to look the same if they both propose it and sign it into law? You really don't know. Like I said before, this is such a complicated conversation. I don't even like them going into it. It doesn't make sense.
Largely speaking, to just write off a policy because
They're
it might
talking
be
about, like,
fascist or
like-
whatever, it's just stupid. There are
When did I
plenty
do
of
that?
policies that over. When did
You
do
wrote
that?
off a judge for being
serious?
nominated by
Wait,
Trump.
hold on.
Okay, you just
What do you
need a
mean,
court
what
stenographer
policy-
here.
What policy did I write off errantly just because it was like fascist coded, but otherwise might be reasonable?
just real quick. You just spent a whole lot of time arguing about how people's intent or why they're doing something doesn't matter to you.
Didn't matter.
That
Yeah.
if it-
That was so central
if it-
before.
If it went
And-
closer towards fascism, then it was fascist. Now you're arguing the exact opposite. You
So-
are
That intent
And
is
it's a-
central
it's
to
a
the
these are
problem
not,
that
wait, hold on.
people-
These are
because the
not
problem
even
is that- yeah, and
remotely
the problem is that
contradictory positions.
people
I'm
don't-
not talking about
People don't want
intent.
to evaluate. People don't want to evaluate the individual policies because policy research is boring and because it takes work and nobody really
What
wants to.
policy
It's
have I
way more
errantly
exciting
written off?
and it's way more fun. Apparently, you're writing off judges because you're saying
Wait,
they're
what
fascist.
you
Which,
said
by the way,
policy. What
writing off a
policy
judge
have
that
I
gets there through a
errantly-
democratic process is a pretty fascist thing to do, by the way.
That's
But you know,
not
there's a
what
lot of
fascism
lefties that
means.
want to do. It kind of is, right?
Wait,
The idea that-
we've got a couple dumb things lined up. First of all, you haven't mentioned a policy that I've errantly written off. Second of all, you've accused me of doing this unwilling to acknowledge the overlap in policy preferences between people on both sides of the political aisle, which
Okay,
I did
so-
right
okay,
off the
sure.
bat in this conversation.
You know what?
Third of
I'm
all,
ready. Hold
with
on. Okay,
regards,
I'm ready.
with
I'm ready.
regards
I've
to
been
the
listening to you.
judges, with
Okay,
regards
so
to the
we're doing
judges,
the actual
it is,
Gish Gallop in real time. If you
this
just
is
take
not.
so
Wait,
much
you
shit,
just
you
you
can't.
made 3 points. I'm responding to 3 points
I
very
didn't make
quickly.
it. We're
You're
having a
not
back
going
and
into
forth on
super
one
depth.
thing.
And with regard, well, then why'd you bring up the judges? You mentioned policies. Now I'm responding to the judges' point. With regards to the judges' point, I said that there were fascists amongst the Republican judiciary, and I said I'd be happy to go and reread the stuff that I'd seen beforehand to come back with more convincing arguments. But with regards to like saying there are fascists in the Republican judiciary, even if there was a democratic process by which they were elected, that's not a fascist accusation. It's not fascist.
If people are elected through a democratic process and they work within our representative democracy by the rules of our democracy to limit voting rights, although that limitation of voting rights is anti-democratic, you can't really tell them that they are fascist. You can't call them fascists because they did something anti-democratic that was allowed in the current system. You can't just pull that out right away. It doesn't really function that way.
fascist to say that a fascist party has fascists amongst it. That's
Okay,
just not
I
what
said,
fascism is.
hold on. I might take the L here. So I'm just curious. So for the people in the room, how many people in here felt like Vaush was saying that if anything was like fascist or fascist adjacent, it ought to be written off as fascist? Did anybody else get that feeling in here?
But what policy? What did I do that
Exactly
on?
what he said.
Okay,
You
that's-
called
that
bullshit.
was the feeling that I got.
Vaush you can't do
That's
that.
what we're trying to understand.
Wait, okay, so Vaush was making
Every
the
single time they rewrite districts with, you know, the gerrymandering thing. Through gerrymandering, both Democrats and Republicans are trying to get a leg up on the competition. We know that entire system sucks, but they are both competing. Sometimes, like Democrats will gerrymander, it might work, it might not work. Sometimes Republican will gerrymander. Republicans are better at gerrymandering than Democrats are. But you can't say either party is fascistic because they are both doing something anti-democratic. That is how the system currently is functioning. You have to openly be against the system, you know, like Trump's doing, like Mastriano does in Pennsylvania, like all that stuff. So like fascist and just normal neocon who is playing politics in a government that is a republic, it's a representative democracy, that already doesn't favor democratic principles that well. They cannot be called fascists. It just, that word can't have that utility.
argument, basically, which is the argument that I think
Referring to
what's
the
his
opinions
fucking
of
name?
conservatives
Mark-
to construct an
Mark-
argument against me.
Okay, he's making the argument that like I think it's Mark Bray, whoever wrote the anti-fascist handbook, right? That like anti-fascists oppose those whose actions in the world help to build fascism, right? Now, me personally, as an anti-fascist, I get really fucking frustrated when people just call everything fucking fascism. When people say things like, "Oh, Republican voters are fascists because they're supporting fascism" or whatever, right? I think it's really important to define to if you want to identify somebody as a fascist, to say, hey, this is an anti-democratic ultra-nationalist who has an interest in protecting like people of a certain ethnic or national identity, possibly a religious identity in the case of something like ISIS, right? I think it's really important to make sure that they have those beliefs before you say this person is a fascist.
But Viv, you should take issue with him calling. You should take issue with him calling Scalia and Bush fascist, shouldn't you?
I substantiate those positions.
What are you talking about? My last point just disagreed with Vaush. I don't think you know what you're watching.
I need to reread the Scalia stuff, but Bush, I think it's fairly.
I literally said you can't call people fascist because they do something that is anti-democratic within the democratic process. I'm saying our entire system is terrible. It already favors the minority in America. I'm not talking. I literally said what Vaush said is wrong because he's saying anybody who is even fascist adjacent should be written off as fascist, and like George Bush's policy should be written off as fascist and all this stuff. He's making a lot of determinations based off a little bit of evidence and based off people who are doing something that only has minorly one characteristic of true fascism. He isn't really understanding the issue to its full potential here.
What is Bush?
I do take exception. I do take exception to that. But I think that we can also recognize that there is a difference between identifying someone as holding personally in their own minds, right, or having expressed in their own words fascist beliefs, right, and people who are taking actions towards building fascism in the world. One is a much more nuanced conversation, much more complicated to be able to prove, right? And that's why I wouldn't be comfortable calling those specific people fascists. And
I'm really curious. Wait, how is Bush a fascist?
I'm still waiting to hear a policy that I've written off because it was fascist.
Bush,
that I
the
didn't
Bush
think of.
doctrine.
I want to hear how Bush. Wait, Piso, how is Bush a
I want to hear an
fascist?
answer to the first accusation you
I don't know.
against me. Are you giving up on
Bush
that?
was
One?
Bush was like a free trade neocon. There was like imperialism.
He had extrajudicial kidnappings. Bush literally had
So did Obama.
like extrajudicial kidnappings.
Everybody,
and
extrajudicial kidnappings does not
that
make you
was
a fucking
bad.
fascist. Yeah,
Isn't it a drone strike under Obama?
On that policy, you made a very specific
I
accusation.
don't think he's a fascist.
Thank you. That's what I'm asking. Why is Bush a fascist?
No, I just explained earlier. I'm sorry, I gotta put my volume down. My roommate complained. I said earlier, I used to think Bush was a fascist when I was younger because he was setting up very dangerous authoritarian things like kidnapping people abroad and sending them to Guantanamo Bay with no judicial remedy. That's where that stuff came from. That doesn't mean
that is authoritarian, and it goes against human rights.
Because the more I've learned about fascism, it requires like a charismatic leader to have like a cult like following. Like people voted for Bush, but they didn't like think like. He like had pretty consistent policies.
Was FDR a fascist? He did a lot of unilateral things. He had a lot of executive power. Was he a fascist? I mean,
right. Trump has been all over the place, and like his followers would just believe whatever he says, and that's the dynamic that's really
cult
dangerous.
of
Like,
personality. You can have a cult of personality and be a populist that cares about, like, FDR is a good example of a populist who cared about civil rights and the democratic process. He didn't do anything that was inherently anti-democratic. The word fascist is being stretched pretty far here. If you're going to call George Bush a fascist, there is a very specific brand of politics that needs to be defined by that word. or that word is defined by or whatever.
We're not talking about.
because
We're
they,
talking about Bush.
really
Why is
like
Bush a
all
fascist?
stuff.
Yeah.
We have
We're
two
talking about
political
Bush.
parties. Hold on,
If you're wondering where that came from,
Because like Bush never did the whole workers of the world unite. There is someone coming to steal your country, and we must justify every action on that basis. We must protect our identity. Or, you know, he actually, when Bush spoke after 9/11, he didn't drum up Islamophobia as much as he could have. He actually suppressed it. Although Islamophobia had a huge surge, Bush wasn't terrible on that. A fascist, 100%, holy crap, would have justified it through those means. But although the outcome of like a fascist doing justifying a war through that means, and the outcome of what Bush did might be the same or similar, you can't call Bush a fascist because he did something a fascist might also do.
oh yeah, it came from the kidnapping people in.
I just want to say that anybody that
wait,
would consider a fucking neocon a fascist is like, Jesus Christ. Like, what the fuck do these words even mean to you guys? Holy fuck.
Oh, we're happy to talk
don't know
about
what
it. I
you're
know.
saying
Did you
about
just come in
you.
here
If
to complain
everybody's
about my
special,
presence on the
nobody
panel?
is.
Were you that desperate for my attention?
No.
It's
Are
literally.
we debating
You.
semantics
You're not the
now?
person I'm referring to.
Is that everything that we're doing? Is just debating
We
semantics?
need some moderation here. Dylan Burns, somebody said he didn't like the moderation. Yeah, probably.
Though.
It's
No,
no,
Prime. I haven't talked.
Okay, go ahead.
We're not just.
I just
debating
want to know what
semantics.
policy I've written off because it
No,
was like
wait,
fascist coded.
We're not debating just semantics. I think Vaush is an incredibly intelligent individual, and I hold him in high regard. So when someone asks him, "Hey, who are the fascists in our country?" and he says, "Hey, who voted for Trump?" I think that's incredibly reductionist, and I think that holding Vaush to task for the words that he said isn't just arguing over semantics. It's arguing over the ideas that are like pervasive all across the left, and it's disgusting. And it's the rhetoric that people on the right use to say, "Hey, everybody on the left is a communist," right? It's literally analogous, and it's lazy and it's disgusting.
okay.
And when I'm in, but when I'm involved in a conversation, I'm gonna hold somebody to the words that they say, with the hope that Vaush will say, "You know what? That was actually an idiotic thing to say. Let's move forward."
So
Which
what
statement
did Josh?
specifically? Are we just talking about the definition of
Josh?
fascism
I
here?
mean, Vaush.
No.
But Vaush later on stated, right? So on specifically that point, right? When he made that, after that, he's saying, well, less that they are all fascists, individually fascists, more that they are simply supporting a fascist, right? There is.
That's not what he said initially.
Then also said that makes them fascist.
I literally just said that.
Okay.
I just said that.
I don't think you can possibly moderate 12 people on a panel. I don't think it's possible. Of course, there are interesting dynamics on here as well. We have two really big creators and a bunch of no names. I know Pisco and Fnatic, but largely, and this is what's his name? Gambit GSU or something like that. I do know wait, she's Maddie something. American Nacho I've seen before. But you have two huge people and a bunch of people who are pretty irrelevant. And I'd be irrelevant too, by the way, if I was on this panel, of course. But it's hard to manage these two people going back and forth.
He stated what GSU Gambit stated, but then he clarified later on that they are supporting a fascist, right? Not necessarily they are fascists, but they are supporting a fascist.
That doesn't disarm the previous statement.
Hold on, really quickly. I feel
without a difference.
so. Hold on. First of all, while I don't think I've walked back anything like horrendous here, I do think that in the context of a 15-person debate panel, if I say, for example, how many fascists are there in America? How many people voted for Donald Trump? And then over the next 20 minutes, I explain why I actually think that action is more important than intent. I don't feel like that's walking back. I feel like that's just the way in which you add nuance to the kinds of statements that you have to make to interject in this environment. Now, in terms of whether or not are we talking about whether Bush is a fascist? In terms of whether or not we're talking. Sure,
Like,
but
that's
wait,
why
hold on.
my
Wait,
response
first of all,
was at least 23%.
First of all,
finish.
we have all here to an extent made statements that we have later walked back on or further enumerated upon. For example, Destiny has already made several statements that he refuses to even acknowledge when I ask him to follow up on because he knows he can't substantiate, such as suggesting that I have disavowed policies because they're fascist leaning without actually looking into the nuances of those policies. He isn't even talking about that now. So if we're talking about what the definition of
we're saying
fascism
that
is,
everything is bad just because it might have some overlap with fascism. That would lead
I never
me to
said
logically
that.
believe
I never.
Okay, I think we can define individuals as fascist. Okay, I think this is my pretty solid take on it. We can define people like Trump who, you know, it's beyond doubt that they are fascist. We can call them a fascist. We can use that word. It makes a lot of sense. But when it comes to policy, there is no practical way we can talk about policies in terms of fascist policy or not fascist policy, unless if we are doing a deep dive, if we are doing a deep analysis, and even then, who cares? We can talk about how it leads into fascism taking precedent, taking lead, but talking about like, was George Bush's handling of Guantanamo Bay fascist or fascistic? I don't see much use in that. People aren't prepared for that level or for that discussion. Labels in general are so annoying. Labels in general don't work because nobody agrees on what labels mean. So I don't like it. I don't like talking about capitalism, socialism, left, right. I really don't care. If you want to, in your free time, talk about, you know, you and your socialism, you and your socialist friends, or you and your capitalistic friends, and you can talk about this all the time. You can joke with your friends, hey, George Bush is a fascist. If you want to do that, have a great time, have fun. But don't talk about it when you're just like having normal conversation. And I talk about this a decent amount. When I was in my high school civics course in ninth grade, the political spectrum we had said anarchism was on the far right and fascism was on the far left. And if you ever see anybody talk on like Facebook or even in person, all these terms mean whatever people want them to mean. They'll say bad things are, you know, Joe Biden is a communist, a fascist, he's a Marxist, he's a social, like, he's all these things. Labels are cringe. I hate labels so much. That's why I don't like using them. I use rural progressivism because it has by far the most utility. It doesn't hurt me at all. It actually helps me when I talk to people. It actually, you know, or like working class Democrat, that might be good. That has good utility. But when it comes to policies, I don't even want to say this is a democratic policy or this is a capitalistic policy or this is a socialist policy. If we have a policy where workers have more power in when it comes to the ownership of their labor, I don't even want to call that socialism. Who cares? It's workers' rights. I don't want to be pegged down by the last 50 years of people defining a certain term.
Okay,
Any points
but the thing was, when I tried to ask you for what is your definition of fascism, you did something that somebody does who doesn't understand a topic. You just tried to give me some examples.
When did you
Because
ask me
know
for
that
that?
those are-
Wait, hold on.
When did
You
I
didn't
ask
ask
you
me
to
for a
define?
definition of fascism. You
Does
asked me
anybody,
to
can anybody here raise
make-
their hand if they remember me
Hold
asking
on.
Vaush how to define fascism? Does
So wait,
anybody
really
remember me
quick.
asking that question?
So this is actually
Okay,
a
thank
question
you
with
for
a
checking.
factual answer. You didn't ask me to define fascism. You asked me to determine how you would find a policy fascist, which is actually way more complicated.
Wait, so you have,
didn't
you
ask
have
me
a
to define
consistent
fascism.
definition of fascism, but you can't tell me what makes a policy fascist?
I think that when you're looking at, and for reasons I already explained, if you recall, when you're talking about whether or not a policy is fascist, there are many nuances which can affect the extent to which I believe it would contribute to fascism. So I think deferring to example is preferable. That's why I talked about how protectionism can be progressive or fascist leaning, even if the text of the law is the same, depending on the context in which the law is passed.
That very own,
So-
your very own definition there doesn't really work, though, because you say just by contributing to fascism, it might make a particular policy fascist. But a left-leaning person...
Those are two conflicting statements, right? So Vaush is saying anything close to fascism is fascistic, right? But then he also says we need more context to make that judgment. So he self-determines what the context is and self-justifies it, I guess. I don't know. I don't like... I feel like that's a contradiction there on his part.
implement a policy that absolutely contributes to fascism, but they don't have the intentions to, and it doesn't really take things
So I
in that
think-
direction.
I think
But it's
Right.
also
Right.
possible that the context of that implementation could make
Did
it
he
so
lie
that a
here?
policy which would otherwise contribute to fascism does not. There's a
Do you
very
see
big
how the,
difference,
do you
for
see how the
example.
meta-narrative around this
The-
is so cancerous and
the-
toxic and a waste of
no,
time? Like,
well,
instead
well,
of
the
ever
thing- well,
actually
it
talking
was-
about the policies themselves, if they're good or
Wait,
bad,
you
we just
can't
say they're
blame me
discussed.
for-
So if a policy is close to fascism, it may as well be fascism. And also there is context that makes a policy that is close to fascism not be close to fascism.
The
Over
toxic
whether or not
meta-narrative
they're
when you
Fascism
came
is
in
not
here
a-
and
it's
exacerbated it.
not-
It
You came
absolutely
in
is.
here
When
and
you-
stirred the toxic meta-narrative. Now you're complaining
I
about
came
it.
in here and I dived into the toxic
Answer all
meta-narrative.
your
If somebody's
questions,
saying
and when
that
you don't have
Bush
any more
and
rebuttals,
Scalia
you
were
come up with,
fascist.
isn't this conversation toxic?
Vosh,
I don't know. Why
no,
are you
That's,
happy?
no, that's not a rebuttal. That's my
Because
entire
Vosh-
point. Is
because
that
Vosh
coming in
isn't
here
very
just
good at
labeling
arguing.
stuff as fascist and bad is not a productive use of
I
time.
didn't label things as fascist and bad. We
Did
were
you
having a
label George
conversation.
Bush, or did you
Hold on.
label the voting
Okay,
record?
hold on.
Okay, it's
So wait,
happening.
you
It's
said-
happening. It's happening. We're moving. We're moving.
You said, wait, hold on. No. I like the big group.
K-Nation on YouTube and Twitch. You want the big
I
group?
like the group. I'm lonely. I
Okay.
like the group.
No,
Look, wait,
fine.
hold on. I can amend this. Okay.
We can fix this.
So saying labeling things fascist and labeling things fascist, comma, and bad are two different things. And it's also very different from saying that I'll write off anything because it could potentially have any fascist
Wait, so hold on,
leanings.
just on that
Did I
statement, so
say
you would label
George
something
Bush-
fascist and good?
I think that there are things that a fascist would do that could be good, like protectionism under some
But they wouldn't
circumstances.
be
Okay, so
fascist.
then you
It wouldn't be
agree
bad
then
if
that
I
you-
merit-
But
Okay,
then
so-
if the context matters, if a fascist does protectionism, it's probably not going to be good. 99.99999% of the time, get it? Percent of the time, that policy is going to result in a bad outcome because a fascist is doing it and justifying it through fascist means. Vaush is making I don't know what he's saying. I don't know what he's saying. I really don't know.
It's stupid.
I agree, but
don't
that
think-
was
I don't
amazing.
think-
Okay.
don't-
The Vaush
think
thinks
this
there
is
are
a
some
confusion
fascist
that
things that are
existed
good.
for
Okay, that's
For the
great.
love of God, it's
Hold on,
really
wait,
easy to explain why you're having this problem, okay?
No, I feel like this is an
there are
exceptionally
multiple,
thing
there
to
are multiple,
understand.
Wait,
there are
really quick, you
wait,
guys do
okay, well,
realize
let me,
I didn't actually finish.
Stop, Biv, go.
Thank you so much. Okay, so fascism has multiple attributes. Okay, I named a few. I think there are others outside that are like debatable or whatever, but like there are some very essential characteristics of fascism, right? We were talking about anti-democracy, ultra-nationalism, a desire to purify that national ethnic or religious group from impure things, generally on the basis of like either degenerate behaviors or fucking immutable characteristics, right? And you can have an individual policy that is like targeted at one of these things, right? Increasing authoritarianism or targeting minority groups in order to repress them or whatever, right? But those on their own don't constitute necessarily fascism. You could have an authoritarian communist government, for example, right? Which some people might call red fashion, can stray into it, but it's irrelevant.
How do you reconcile that with what Vaush said earlier, that intent doesn't matter? Before intent was...
Authoritarianism arises because of communism, and we call them red fascists. Then fascism becomes another word for authoritarianism. I don't like it. I don't like any of these conversations.
Stop fucking lumping me in.
Oh
with
my
Vaush, man.
goodness.
I'm quite clearly saying that I think he's being irresponsible in his rhetoric, and I disagree with his idea that like George Bush is a fascist. Okay, please fucking stop like kneeling at me about that. When you're trying to identify an individual policy as fascist, it's very difficult to do without looking at the reasons why it's being implemented and who it's being implemented by, right? Because who it's being implemented by might be expressing all those other things.
And how is the policy written? Who carries out the policy? Is it a decentralized police state doing it? Is it ICE doing it? Is it the executive branch doing it through a commission or through like I don't know, through a subcommittee? Dude, there are so many things you need to ask.
Together at once, right? And are clearly trying to build fascism through the implementation of this policy, whereas like other people
trying to build fascism. Build fascism. Are they trying to? Okay. That's another conversation.
Might be implementing this policy for different reasons, because policies tend to only kind of target one or two of those attributes. They can't target like just full-on fascism unless the policy is like, we're going to have a fascist government now.
Okay, yeah, but there's a big problem with that whole conversation. There's a whole big problem with that. Once you get to the point where you're like literally like where you start trying to label a whole bunch of things as fascism just because they have the potential to possibly be fascist adjacent, then at this point now the phrase becomes so incredibly vacuous that now it doesn't mean anything.
I love it. Good take.
It's the fact that that's been demonstrated in this conversation. And once you have people literally making like not being even able to define the word fascist, and you're still using it in a conversation with these same people that have literally they played fast and loose with the definition.
George Bush was an idiot. God told me to go to war. Oh my goodness. But people have been saying things like that. I'm pretty sure up until America became more secular, Democrats were saying stuff like that. Like, God told me to do this. God told me to do that. I did this for God. Like
fascism and like 10 back and forth.
The definition here.
Wait, with 10 back and forths, and Vaush, listen, in all fairness, you still didn't give one, by the way, because you definitely were asked.
I was asked and I provided one about 20 minutes ago. Do you remember?
Wait,
I like Umberto Eco's definition better, but those are too long for a panel.
He said he liked Umberto Eco's 14 points.
Let him go.
Stop. What's the definition?
Do we really want me to read out Umberto Eco's 14 points?
No.
Oh my God.
Okay, how about why is Bush or Scalia a fascist?
Sorry, what did you say?
Okay.
Vivian gave a good definition of fascism. She gave good like.
Destiny.
Yeah, I just want to know, how are Bush or Scalia a fascist?
So with Scalia, I would need to go back over the case rulings that he's given because I don't have a great memory for the judicial stuff. I said that earlier. I'd be happy to come back with a lot more arguments because this is stuff that I half remember from podcasts that I've listened to and articles that I've read and conversations that I've had. With Bush, I think the argument is a lot more direct, and it's obviously something I remember a little bit more directly. I think that Bush, the obvious ones, the straightforward ones are obviously the 2020 election and the extent to which it was not fairly earned, in my opinion. The broader ones, though, are the...
2000.
2000. Did I see 2004? I meant 2000.
Bush went to court. He submitted himself to the authority of the court.
No, make him answer questions. Don't spoil.
Hold on.
I really want to hear why he thinks that election was really fascist. I want to hear
Destiny,
that.
how arrogant do you have to be to believe I'm not familiar with the way in which the 2000 thing went down? Okay, I'm
That's why I
perfectly
really
aware
want
that
to
it
hear
went
your
to court.
description of it.
Okay, I wasn't going to describe it. I wasn't going to describe it any further. It was a buddy relationship. God, what's the term?
How about a governor, Jeb Bush?
No, when you're no
Parasocial?
a nepotistic relationship between George Bush and a person already in power in order to undemocratically secure an election to which he otherwise probably didn't have a right. I think that's definitely in line, at least with the anti-democratic element of fascism, though it's nowhere near as overt as what Trump did, of course. So you
Yeah, well, his definition of fascism for Scalia is 1, conservative policies I don't like. 2, he had rulings that Vaush would deem anti-democratic. He claimed to be a textualist, except when it benefit his ideology a couple times. So like under those 3 like ideas, I think I gave more reasoning than Vaush did. But you can't call somebody a fascist over that.
That you have the deference to.
Then the word literally doesn't mean anything at that point. You have to call him like it's worse than like a neocon label would be. That's the thing with labels. We're trying to attribute things to people. So he's below. He'd be below. He's like a really bad neocon. Like can we call people authoritarian neocons? Would that work instead of fascist? How about we use that label? It's packs more of a punch, I guess. In my opinion.
I mean, he submitted himself. He submitted himself to
He wants
the
to
court
stop at one
system.
point. He wants to go like 15 points.
no, we have to stop him.
Hold on. Wait, do you want me to give the reason or not? Do you want to argue that or what? Do you want to
Let's
argue
talk
that?
about it. Go on.
Wait, hold on.
In order to explain one point, you bring up like 7 things tangentially that are all wrong and disagreeable, and then like nobody
I'm
wants to
sorry.
go back to the
What
original
have you said
point.
so far that's wrong? Explain what
Let
I've
him
said so far.
respond.
No, hold on. Because wait, please, one person at a time. Destiny is so horny to disagree with me for his audience that he's jumping in, accusing me of saying things incorrect. What if I said it's incorrect? Destiny,
I'll tell you.
if I said, hey, buddy, I've been in here for an hour and a half. You jumped in here because of me. What did I say that was incorrect about
First of all,
the 20?
I'm arguing on fascism.
What did I say that was
Way more
incorrect?
than you have. Okay. Secondly,
What did I say that was
you
incorrect?
said so many things that are incorrect. The fact that you think the majority of voters, that people that voted for Trump, are fascists. I don't remember all the incorrect things. I don't
right
remember.
now with Bush.
I don't remember. I don't remember
The
all
past
incorrect
30
things.
seconds, you don't remember what I said? You just said that I've said incorrect things. What did I say?
Remember when Vaush was
Said that
crying
I said
people
that I
let him
said that
finish
he
his
said.
22 paragraph answers? I don't remember all the wrong things you said because every time you explain or respond to somebody, you have to say 15 more things. So
I
we
said
never actually
one
get to go
thing.
back. No,
I said one thing about Bush, and
No,
you
wait,
said
wait.
he's saying
That's-
incorrect things. What did I say that was
Wait, Vaush,
You
incorrect?
did say something that was incorrect.
Hold on, wait.
I would
Hold on, wait. This is simple. Destiny, don't do the meta conversation thing, right? You would be
conversation.
frustrated. No, listen. He's asking you directly, what did I just say about Bush in the election
have
that you
anything.
disagree
He's
with?
just mad.
Can you respond to that? Because you don't like meta conversations.
I was curious why he thought the outcome of that election was fascist, or why that was fascist leaning.
Anti-democratic. I think that having an elected representative who's your brother, who facilitates the implementation of a ballot system that was very clearly out of line with previous expectations and led to very specific and targeted results which favored your brother, and then going by the results of that election and then getting your party on board with all of the presuppositions and justifications of that ballot implementation is fairly anti-democratic. But before I had even finished that point, you were screaming, he's already wrong.
No, we can't stop there. That's what I was going to address. That's where the point. That's where the problem comes in. I don't think that's fascist even a little bit. What I think is you can
Is
say
it anti-democratic?
You can say it's anti-democratic, right?
Submit yourself to the element.
Wait, somebody said I'm simping for Destiny. Do you understand? I literally tried critiquing Destiny's point about how Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump are similar with what they advocate for. They're both pushing for fascist policies. I tried critiquing him, but Vaush is being so unbelievably bad here. He's being so bad here. It's hard for me to critique Destiny without just saying Vaush doesn't know what he's talking about, because Vaush is making my argument look bad.
There's a bunch of things. There are a bunch of other election systems that would not be fascist.
Oh, you're joking? Okay, good.
Right? Like things that Stalin did weren't necessarily.
Yeah, I'm trying to build a case.
So I know you're trying to build a case, but if you build a case and the first premise of your case is flawed, then that means now you're building.
Wait, hold on.
You are building a gish gallop.
Hold on. Wait, that's not
fascist. Just saying anti-democratic is not enough to say fascist.
Wait,
even a little
that's
bit.
why I wasn't done. Wait, hold on. Why do you think Bush is fascist? Okay, let me give out some arguments to explain some tenets of fascism that he adhered to. First, anti-democracy. Well, hold on.
I don't know the internet lingo. I'm sorry. I'm old. I'm a very old, early 20s.
Give out some arguments to explain some tenets of fascism that he adhered to. First, anti-democracy. Well, hold on. That didn't singly prove the fascism. Well, I know there are more points.
No, but this wasn't an active anti-democracy. Stop. So one is Bush submitted himself. Bush submitted himself to the authority of the court.
I'm aware of that.
Okay,
I don't think that makes it not anti-democratic. The way in which that behaves is very
definition of
nepotistic.
democracy.
Wait, hold on.
Judges are appointed by elected officials. Sorry.
So an action can't be anti-democratic if a court ends up signing off on it. Is that correct?
Not
if a court
if
signs
everything
off on it.
I'm a boomer zoomer.
Judges are appointed by
process.
officials.
Correct. Yes.
No, that is not what's. No,
on
that
the
is
substantive
absolutely
issue.
not the case. So hold
On
on,
the substantive issue, it wasn't even a
would
Bush.
Bush's, sorry, not Bush. Would Trump's big lie then not have been anti-democratic if the courts had ended up agreeing with him and all of his ridiculous court cases gone through? No, it still would have been anti-democratic.
No,
Even if
they
it was
just
passed
don't-
through a democratic system.
I'm really, no, hold on. I'm so glad that you're saying this because to a lot of left-leaning people, anti-democratic means it doesn't agree with me. This is why they want to eliminate the filibuster. This is why they want to pack the courts. This is why they want to delete the Senate because everything that doesn't.
Answer the question.
Let's say hypothetically, we have a fascist like Trump. I think we all agree Trump is a fascist. We have, at this point at least, we have a Trump fascist in office. Let's say we have people like him for 40 or 50 years. And through that time, he's able to literally wash out the entire judicial system with appointees who are literally insane, like just crazy. At that point, can you call those rulings fascist? Again, I don't think there's any utility in this, but at that point, maybe. But where we are now, we'd have to look at the evidence. We'd have to look at how they came to that ruling. We'd have to look at, was there any exterior pressure on the judges for some reason? We're talking about this hypothetical in like a dystopian nightmare world in the future. Again, this isn't really practical for what we're talking about for today, though.
Big lie have been anti-democratic if the courts had agreed with it.
Let Destiny finish.
If he followed the democratic process and that process turned out a decision, you can't say that it's anti-democratic. You might not like the decision, but it's not anti-democratic.
So hold on. Let me just ask. If Trump's big lie had been affirmed by the courts, would you have considered it anti-democratic?
But like fascism needs to like turn over the current system. It needs to fracture the current system. So if the current system slowly moves to authoritarianism or it slowly moves to like a single party control because Republicans can like suppress the left vote so much, is that fascist? That's why we have to be really specific about this. How are we going to use the term fascist? Are we going to use it for right-wing authoritarianism? Or is there a lot more to it? Is there a lot more to fascism than simply a right-winger, a neocon, who is going to play politics to their advantage? That's why this conversation is very hard. You can't call everybody a fascist because that word needs to mean something more than what it currently, than what Vaush is using it for.
When you say his big lie, that the election was stolen or whatever. No, wait, let me fucking do this.
The broader effort to suppress the mail-in votes, the whole campaign that was raised across the country in an effort to secure the election illegitimately.
If he won his supreme, if the courts turned out the decision, then that's the decision that goes. That's not an anti-democratic thing. No.
Okay, I fundamentally disagree.
Okay, that's fine.
Hold on. Really quickly. I know that Destiny is lying here because he had the opposite take.
But you can both agree. You can take my take, which is the correct one. It can be anti-democratic through democratic means without being anti-democracy. Our current system is not a democracy. It really isn't. It's a representative democracy, republic, whatever. The minority in America has more power than the majority because of how our Senate and executive is elected. So you can both say it's anti-democratic and it's also not fascist. Those can be two things you agree with.
Hold on. Really quickly. I know that Destiny is lying here because he had the opposite take on Morales.
Why are you having a meta conversation about this?
Hold on.
No, that was different because he Morales deleted the part of the court that didn't agree with him. That's that would be an example of anti-democratic.
Did he do it through a legal process? Hold on, Fanatic, hold on. We need to do one thing at a time. So I remember Destiny criticizing Evo Morales because he got behind an amendment to the Constitution that was made by the Supreme Court. A legal process entirely done through the legal endowments of the Bolivian Supreme Court, which nonetheless he was comfortable calling anti-democratic, one which I am comfortable calling anti-democratic, because it is entirely possible for a democratic system to allow anti-democratic acts to take place. To suggest otherwise is absolutely ridiculous.
While that is true, we would have to see what steps were being taken by the people and if they were necessarily anti-democratic. So for instance, if somebody, we'll say,
like
for instance,
Morales
loses an election or is unable to get something passed, and then they fundamentally alter the structure or the institution in order to get something passed, now we can make arguments like, this feels like
what
a little bit
different.
So
let's say, for instance, Trump and they were biased in his favor.
It doesn't matter. Trump won the election. That's part of what the president of the United States is allowed to do. Is appoint judges.
So wait, the Supreme Court legally changed the Constitution to expand term limits for Evo Morales.
Court doesn't change. No, I can't.
Legality is not sufficient, but it's some evidence that you're comporting democracy.
I see. So
it's not
a completely arbitrary standard that gets invoked or not invoked depending how mad we are.
You don't have separate extrinsic evidence. The election, by all accounts, was extrememely close, and there's some.
Is this anti-democratic? Would it own the lefties to say it's anti-democratic?
No.
Let me think for a minute.
Do you have what's your quantum of evidence to suggest that Gore won Florida? There are some studies after the fact that
Bolivia's court annulled the result of a referendum held last year in which a majority of Bolivians rejected his proposal to change the constitution. It said Morales had lost the vote by a narrow margin because of an illegal defamatory campaign. The opposition said the ruling was an attack on democracy. Morales has been in office since 2006. This is obviously an old article. So they had a referendum. What was the fraud based on? The claim of fraud.
Indicate he won by some hundred of votes, but the process matters, right? And whether or not Florida State administrators follow that process also matters.
The process absolutely matters. However, so here's an example, by the way. This is an example that I love to bring up, okay? It is the North Carolina voter ID law. So there was an attempt made in North Carolina to ban the admission of certain types of voter identification, which just so happened to completely coincide with the types of identification Black people are more likely to use. They also targeted certain windows, availabilities of voting. There was a lot to it. It happened a while ago, but basically it was pretty clearly, and it was ruled as such, an attack on the ability for Black people to vote. So it's entirely possible, alt universe, that law could have gone unchallenged by the courts. It could have gone straight through. A legal law passed with the full backing.
You're arguing against no one.
Hold on.
You're arguing against no one.
Hold on.
And then he won a narrow election. Morales did.
It could have passed legally, and it still would have been anti-democratic.
But again, like I said before, you can say what Morales did was anti-democratic, but he doesn't need to be a fascist. That's why I think Destiny was wrong with the point he made when it comes to anti-democratic functions, and also, does that mean you're fascist? Like, I don't like the point he made for that, because you could be both. You could be anti-democratic and also not be a fascist. But Vaush, I mean,
Separate these two things. Can we separate these two things, right?
It still can be anti-democratic.
The process and the effect, okay? The process can be democratic. The effect cannot be. It can demolish democracy. Like we can do that, right?
It just stop there. It doesn't just stop there. Look, Destiny's been trying to make this point this entire time, and I think that this is something that you keep ignoring, Vaush. It's not just whether or not it went through the courts. That's not enough. It's the fact that you would have to prove that it went through the courts, and the courts did something untowards, and at that point, then you'd be able to say it's anti-democratic. Once someone submits themselves to the court, assuming all things are on the up and up, and there's nothing subversive happening by the courts themselves, then at that point you have to say you can no longer say it's anti-democratic. And
hold on. For examples that I've already provided, I fundamentally disagree. It's entirely possible to push for anti-democratic things democratically. We had Jim Crow in this country, for God's sake. Wait, please let me finish. I saw you open your mouth.
But Vaush's own, okay, so Vaush agrees with me here, but it seems like his own statements are contradicting what I said, right? No, he's contradicting what he said before.
We had, for decades, an explicit system.
Oh, is this what the meme was about? I saw a meme that during this debate, Vaush would make an opinion. He would have a position, and then 5 minutes later, like, go back on that position. Is that what he is doing here?
Class citizenship for Black people, which was entirely supported through the legal framework of our country. That was anti-democratic.
Oh, I think they both look bad. I think Vaush looks really bad, though.
Yes, it was.
Legality is something. Wait, Vaush. Legality is not enough.
Destiny is letting Vaush tear himself apart. Like Vaush is doing the work all by himself.
Wait, please, God. Yeah. I know we're so horny to jump on these points, but yes, it is possible for something.
It's a straw man.
Shut up.
Wait, hold on. Nobody's straw manning, and it's not a gish gallop. I've been trying to make the same point this entire time. And a straw man would be a mischaracterization of other people's points.
It is a mischaracterization.
I'm only trying to describe my own. I'm only describing my own.
I think the other panel members are doing a better job. I think Pisco and Gambit are doing a much better job of holding Vaush to the fire than Destiny was. 100%. I think they're doing a better job than Destiny was.
The point is that even if something is passed democratically, it can be anti-democratic. This is self-evidently true. If you look at the history of the legal system in this country, Jim Crow was passed democratically.
No one denies this. You keep saying it. No one denies it. It's an important
we agree something will be democratically passed.
Nobody said that legality was sufficient to know that something is democratic. But following procedure.
Well, then why did Destiny make that point?
No, I made that point that submitting yourself to the court, following procedures, in this particular case, there's not a great deal of evidence.
Wait, they did that with Jim Crow. There were plenty of court cases.
You need to show us
when you're quantum. Your question implied that the judges would have come up with a different decision, which implies that there would have been some different evidence that would have been evaluated when they were going over all of the election stuff.
I'm simply saying that you can have a
My
law.
only complaint is that Pisco is not getting a good enough chance to talk, because of course these two are going to take precedent, like I said before. So if they take precedent in this whole conversation, Gambit and Pisco don't have a chance to like. I wish it was just Pisco and Vaush, or like those two, Vaush and Destiny. So like they can have their little scuffle, and then those two can really dig in. And he's a lawyer, right? Pisco is, so he can really dig into the legality of all the stuff, and he's informed on how to argue those points and everything.
Passed through a democratic process with
So I wish
judges
he had a
signing
better
off on
chance
it,
to
even in
talk.
good faith, and it can still be an anti-democratic law. This is
Oh, but you
obviously
need-
the case.
you need
This
a
is
separate
point
one.
on Bush, by the way.
But
I'm
you need
so horny to
quantum
disagree
of
with every premise
evidence
here.
to show that, and you need to prove that other quantum of evidence that's anti-democratic. You need to suggest to me and tell me why was it anti-democratic? Everything else that you're talking about with this election. I mean, it was
what anti-democratic?
So this election was decided by some hundreds of votes, right? And it was decided, as we know, famously by.
Okay, I would need to reread because I haven't actually had to read this for a while. But if I remember correctly, the butterfly ballots were essentially an inexplicable alteration to the previous balloting system that were all but explicitly designed to confuse older people in certain areas of the state to vote for a candidate that they otherwise wouldn't have voted for, to take votes away from Al Gore. So I think that is very.
Older people? Don't older people go Republican more? Or is it like Democratic old people?
Very obviously being done with the intent to manipulate the legitimate outcome of the election. It was done nepotistically from a relative of the person who was president to be. Now, I consider that fundamentally anti-democratic, a smear on the ideals of this country. That it ended up passing, that may mean it was legitimately anti-democratic. It may have followed the law, but I still think it's anti-democratic, thus anti-democracy.
Where's your proof of this?
I can only substantiate this point to such a level of depth.
Vaush's argument that fascism or like that anti-democratic functions don't need to be fascist. I already said I agree with that, but I don't know why he's going into this whole conspiracy theory thing.
What else do you want? It's obviously an attempt to manipulate the legitimate outcome of the election by confusing voters.
He's going back on all of his position. He is doing it. He's actually doing it. Like caught in 4K by thousands of people.
But you have evidence of it.
My contention here.
One
is
thing
that
I don't like, before this person talks, one thing I don't like is this framing. I don't want Vaush's audience. This is really bad for everybody involved. I don't want Vaush's audience to look at it in this way. Where is it? Right here. I don't want his audience to look at it in this way. One versus everyone. One versus everyone. I don't want it to seem like Vaush is this like fighter for the freedom of information and he's a genius and he has to stand up for his ideals against the evil hating Destiny and the panel that's trying to get him on every question, when he's literally making up conspiracy theories about this and he's going back on his positions in real time as he makes them. So like I don't want Vaush's audience, which by the way his audience is freaking young, a very young audience, TikTok generation audience, younger than me probably. I don't want his audience to be like sucked into this trap of thinking Vaush is unequivocally right. And Destiny's side too. I hate when his community does that because they have a lore around Destiny as well.
the butterfly ballots. Your
Oh yeah, the
argument, as I
dislikes.
understand it, is
But
that
Destiny, it's just so weird. Because Destiny has to surrender some points. Because everything he says, he tries to bring it back to logical means. I think he does it to a fault, but he does try to bring it back to his principles, and like he wants to lay it all out on the table. He doesn't want to call people fascist blandly, although he himself has admitted on like Twitter and stuff he doesn't hold himself to the same standards as he would hold himself to, or you know, he doesn't hold himself to the same standards because he's not perfect or whatever. But I just don't like I don't like that.
The evidence of it.
My contention here is that the butterfly ballots, your argument, as I understand it,
They
is that
did
they
correct
were
him
intentionally made
in
in
a
order
subreddit.
to rig the election for George W.
For
Bush.
George
That's
Bush.
a pretty George Bush. Sorry,
That's a big claim.
Pretty extraordinary claim.
Let me bring up my
And
21-year-old
I'm
documentation.
I'm younger than you, Tristan. So
throwing
a
it
lot
out there,
younger.
no
I'm not
evidence.
throwing it out.
no
Hold
real-
on. Wait. The idea that I'm the only person who is
It doesn't
made
matter how
this
many
claim is
people believe
ridiculous.
that. That's
This
very
is-
conspiratorial.
All the old Vaush watchers watch. That's why you're all old, because you like the good politics from Vaush. That's why you watch me, because I do the good stuff. the cringy stuff is for the youngins.
Fraud in
Wait, hold on.
2020.
Wait, I'm sorry. Wait, we are regressing so quickly into low IQ arguments, but I'm glad we're all kept in good company here, and everyone who agrees to disagree with me. So if you are in charge of
And the
deciding
7
which
Supreme
ballots,
Court justices that also disagree with you, by the way. but
hold
okay.
on.
Yeah,
If
one
you
of
are
those is
in
fascist,
charge,
so-
by
Just
the way,
one was fascist. That's still 6
self-evidently
non-fascist
irrelevant.
Supreme Court justices. But yeah.
Will this retort own the left? Let me interject. So, with regards to the butterfly ballots, just like with the North Carolina voter ID laws, we are taking a look at an unjustified but significant change to an existing system, which had a very deliberate outcome and seemed to be done by people with a very deliberate motive.
You
Now,
know that.
If anyone who is a lawyer or I guess has graduated high school can tell you, trying to infer intent from people's behaviors is part of understanding
Vaush,
what they want.
same exact argument back to you in the
You're about
context of
to say that
2020.
I said intent doesn't matter, but now
No, I'm not
you're
about to say
accused
that.
of
I'm not about to say
conspiracy.
that. So in 2020, right, a lot of laws were changed in response to COVID in a deliberate attempt, Republicans might say, to change the content who's going to vote.
Wait, the butterfly system was designed. Okay, the butterfly system was literally designed by a Democrat. The thing that Vaush is talking about right now, is that true? That she's a Democrat? Yeah, she was a Democrat, the person who did the butterfly ballots, and Vaush is talking about it as if there's a grand conspiracy with the state's governor, as if the governor had anything to do with the decentralized process in which these ballots were used.
It's their argument for showing that these laws were anti-democratic or somehow perverse.
A few were
The same
changed.
argument.
A few were actually changed without approval as well, right? By different states.
Correct. Some were done.
That's why some ballots in Pennsylvania, I believe, got thrown out.
Alterations to the voting system are anti-democratic.
That's what you're saying. It's
No,
I think
that,
your
oh my
analysis
God.
That's where it's
That's
confusing.
the same
Working
people you're
backwards
agreeing
from
with
a
these days.
conclusion.
This is the line that you're in with now. You might as well be agreeing with Rob or something in the next panel. Listen, I said
all the unnecessary
only-
ad hominems because you don't
not
understand
only-
that you're so upset that if a democratic process disagrees with you, that you can't just call it undemocratic.
Since you crawled in here to get my attention, you've got my attention. Congratulations. I wouldn't harp on it. Now, with regards to the Florida situation and the butterfly ballots, I have not just said a thing happened that benefited Republicans. It was a thing happened with an unjustified excuse for being implemented. You know why they put forward those the mail-in ballot laws. It was
When Bernie Sanders lost the primaries, because the entire world came against him, because the big pharma executives literally went to Joe Biden's house and threatened to kill him, and then Joe Biden and Obama, like he sounds like all the conspiracy theorists that believed the Democratic primary was completely stolen and all the ballots were faked, or not faked, but it was all a big conspiracy that Bernie lost.
because of COVID. There was a clear
No, not
and
just that.
obvious-
No. In 2019,
It makes sense. Look at the video right there. Do you think this county ran by Democrats would actually count the election right? I saw a video from conservative world star AmericanGunLover.net that showed people moving boxes in the voting room, and they didn't let every Trump supporter come and literally grope every single person counting ballots. Therefore, there's no way this election is real. All the blue counties, oh my God, all the blue counties that went Biden were ran by Democrats. Oh, that's proof, baby.
Pennsylvania.
Stop. Pisco, let him finish.
I'm responding to like
Let him
people.
gallop. Pisco, shut the fuck up. Let him keep saying
Geese
wrong shit.
galloping is when you respond to one point in nuance, everybody. Get your definitions from somewhere else. Anyway, with regards to the mail-in ballots, there was a clear and obvious reason why they were implemented. Because of COVID. It was a common sense policy that anyone could justify. That ended up benefiting the Democrats by like majority was mostly because Republican propaganda kept Republicans from taking the COVID threat seriously. So with regards to the butterfly ballots, there was no existing justification for the alteration to the ballots. It was a highly unusual change to the ballots that had a very specific outcome done by people with a very specific intent. Now, low IQ individuals amongst us, such as Destiny, annulled as he is by his anger, might say all of these things are the same. Voter ID laws implemented during a global pandemic that happens once in a century are exactly the same as the brother of a presidential candidate making an unjustified alteration with a specific outcome to voting in a very marginal state. But I say, no, these are actually not the same thing. There are critical differences. One of them is undemocratic, anti-democratic actually, and one of them isn't.
So the 2019 Pennsylvania law predates COVID, and that was a law that extended absolute mail-in voting. to
Yeah,
everyone.
that is a true thing Pisco is talking about. There was actually a compromise. I forget what the Republicans got in the compromise. To extend mail-in ballots before COVID, Republicans said, I don't want straight line party voting anymore. So you can't go on the ballot and just put all Democrat anymore. You can't just sign one bubble to vote for one party. They wanted that removed from ballots. So now you have to go down and pick Democrat, 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 or Republican, Republican, Republican if you only want to vote for one party. So in exchange for getting rid of that, Republicans in Pennsylvania allowed better mail-in voting to be done. And then because of COVID, Republicans really regretted making that compromise. And that one minor move, what seemed actually to be a minor move in state politics, may have helped win Joe Biden the election.
Pennsylvania law predates COVID, and,
They didn't
that was
even
a law
know.
that extended absolute mail-in voting to everyone in
get to the rest
Pennsylvania.
of the Bush points. We're
No, but what I'm
So
talking
wait. That's fair. Hold on. That's fair because one of these 14 points that I found was like fascist regimes tend to make use of like patriotic models, whatever. So under that, like
14? Oh no, that's a bad number.
and paraphernalia and flags, like so under that I could name like fucking
get stuck
anything
there.
fascist. So like how many points, how many tenants does this have to cover
everything is
before it becomes
fascist,
fascist?
flags. What are we? Come on.
This is your 14 points that you brought up.
Oh, boy.
So like how many does it need to cover before it's fascist?
So I just we can't.
let's not
If we're
focus
gonna
on-
have this discussion, like you're scanning the points. One component of fascism is ultranationalism.
But that's all you're only talking about one point of this. To say the entire to say that Bush is
Are we
fascist.
moving off Bush then? Are we doing definitions 101? What are we moving to?
Yeah,
Where's the next
let's
line?
not focus on definitions.
I'm still on Bush. I'm just trying to figure out like what some other
I was
points.
going to leave at midnight. I didn't expect to be here for 2 hours, but I guess I'm here for it now. What do we want to move to next? What's the next line?
I don't know, it's not an address bullet thing. Like you make a claim, but this is very conspiratorial thinking in nature. You come to this, you have a conclusion, and then you work backwards from it. There's no really justifiable way that you have presented
claim there was funny business in Florida,
purposely and intentionally made.
This is the problem, Vaush.
Intentionally
Vaush.
made in order to
there's
influence the
no
election.
problem here. There's no problem here.
There's a problem.
Wick has been making points basically like this is the beginning of the panel, not actually adding anything, but just like underlying out by making really dumb accusations.
Oh my God,
There is a problem. There is a problem.
Hold on, wait. This is the last thing that I have to say in this. The idea that saying there was funny business in Florida in 2000 with regards to the butterfly ballots is conspiratorial and unjustified is a hysterical claim that I'm not going to justify further. I feel like I've excluded.
So what you just saw, the Florida Democratic Party made a move that accidentally hurt them. Dang.
Would be, if that was your claim, that would be a tremendous walkback. You didn't say there was some funny business. You started going on about the brother was the governor, and they clearly changed things, so they were trying to make sure way. That is way different than funny
There's
business.
so much about Bush that Vaush can be criticizing if he really wants to pin something down as like anti-democratic or fascist or whatever. I don't know why he chose to make up this like Bernie or bust level conspiracy.
Governor, and they clearly changed things, so they were trying to make sure way. That is way different than funny business. You implied a conspiracy, much the same that Trump and the other Republicans do about the 2020 election. You're literally making exact same claims on the other side.
The common position that the governor of Florida aided his brother in the presidency by doing an unjustified like a ballot change that ended up specifically helping him is exactly the same as Donald Trump lying about the election. Did you not say? I'm sorry. This is, by the way, from the guy who was out there.
It is, dude. What Vaush is doing is pretty similar, actually. He's making a claim with no basis in reality. He's unwilling to walk it back, and he's saying that Bush had a secret meeting with his brother who, behind the scenes, altered the democratic process in Florida to assure that George Bush would win. So Jeb Bush assured that George Bush would win. That is pretty similar to what Trump does. I mean, that's not good. I mean, dude, I don't like it.
Oh, far, by the way, is ridiculous.
Carolina vote.
What you just said, by the way, is ridiculous. It wasn't just one person. It was an entire state legislature. It was a Florida Supreme Court and the actual Supreme Court.
Hold on, Vaush, let him go.
You argued that the North Carolina voter ID law is racist against people. Hold on, because it's comparable against people making the same arguments you're making now. Do you know what the people you argued with said? They said this is conspiratorial. You can't actually say there was this intent here. Sure, there may have been motive, and the outcome was very deliberate, and there was evidence that they would have had a specific reason to have done it in the way that they did.
For the Bush case.
No, the North Carolina.
Vaush is saying all of this knowing it's not true. It really makes you wonder how much does Vaush say that he doesn't think or know is true? How much is rhetoric? How much in debates has he literally made stuff up and just hoped to not be pressed on it? Because I've seen this happen multiple times. Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Hey, shut up.
I wasn't even done, but I'm almost done.
Shut up.
So far, you're making arguments.
Everyone, hold on. Don't worry. I'll help you out. Shut up for a second. We gotta have order. Look, I told you we should move to a private panel. You don't want to do that. Okay, fine.
I just like the idea that ultra progressive Destiny is saying the accusation that Bush and his brother like were responsible for
It's not
like,
true.
it's not
It's
an
not
argument.
It's not true at all. Oh no, dude.
I just like that ultra.
My view of Vaush is being decimated right now. Holy crap, dude. I know a lot of people don't want to criticize him because he helps them keep their numbers flowing when he brings them on to talk, but like, oh my god.
Progressive Destiny, who definitely hasn't slid to the right in his fight against the lefties, is saying that is comparable.
I already know he's not going to platform me. So.
You're not adding to the conversation. You know that.
Go ahead.
There's like 20 people open their mouths. They're so triggered by
I
it.
just have to respond to the North Carolina. Okay, so he does this. He drops a really bad claim, follows it up. Like it's like
You haven't
the
justified a
Rubio
single
Democratic
dumb
debate.
you made since you come on here, buddy.
It looks so bad here. Oh my god.
And drop a bad analogy that doesn't fit, and then make an ad hom to try to like win the debate and have like an optics
the
win.
Trump
Okay?
big lie to Bush in 2020, and you want to impugn me for bad analogies? You're such a clown
Because
these
the
days,
comparison. Are you okay? You sound actually so upset right now.
And
I'm so
he's
sorry.
just insulting Destiny too. Like, oh my god, dude. Is Vaush a fascist? Question mark. Ru was in here. Big Vaush fan. Before I actually turn this on, and Ru said Vaush dominated everybody on this panel. Well, I guess the answer is I'm not okay with lying in politics. This is like, oh, god dang, dude.
Came in here mad as fuck, and the smile doesn't fool
fate
anyone.
win. Don't be talking about. Hey, you know how I feel about Mike from PA. He does worse than what Vaush is doing here.
Are you okay? You sound actually
on a
so
daily
upset right now. I'm
basis.
so sorry.
You came in here mad
I know
as
you
fuck,
love
and
Mike.
the smile doesn't fool anyone, by the way.
I'm
not mad. Just really horny whenever I call out my
Actually, I love it because like
Steven?
there are some people in this world like you and Fuentes. I think I'm legitimately the only people that piss you off. I actually wear that with pride. So okay, when you say, well, you use these
Little
arguments for
flustered
North
there,
Carolina, you imply that in North Carolina there was a conspiracy, and I'm implying it in Florida. Guess what? In Florida, the Supreme Court made a ruling on that, and there wasn't a conspiracy. As far as I'm aware, now I could be wrong. I have never been made aware of some broad conspiracy between Bush and his brother to rig that election. Now, when you talk about North Carolina, my understanding is that more or less a conspiracy had kind of been proved. The state legislature in North Carolina, and you should know this because you copy paste all of my opinions. So I know you've heard me say this exact line before. The North Carolina state
You seem to have
legislature
walked off them,
literally,
so I guess they're just mine now.
specifically requested by race different voter data from different areas, and then closed
Then
down
why were
every
the
single
butterfly
thing
ballots
accordingly.
implemented?
If that was the case, why was anybody implementing anything around the coronavirus?
Why was
center?
anyone
Like,
implementing? What a phenomenal rebuttal. Why specifically that incredibly strangely laid out, very different
why didn't the
ballot
Supreme
that
Court agree
just
with
so
you,
happened?
Vaush? Why didn't the Supreme Court agree with you?
So now we return
No,
back
no.
to the previous argument, and I have to ask you, would
You
you
can't-
still be
you can't
saying the
respond to
North
me.
Carolina voter law was racist
So,
if the courts
anyway,
hadn't disagreed with it?
The North
This is the same bad argument you made earlier.
I'm assuming that the process is working to some extent. So if the
Yeah,
court
so your
decided something
argument is
different,
legality determines whether or not something's anti-democratic.
No, that's not. It's
Yeah, Vaush needs a big ego check. He really does. I don't want somebody with his following playing only rhetorical games, having zero principle whatsoever. He acts 0% on principle. He says that all the time. He said it to Kyle and Crystal. That's how he bases his world off of. That's how he bases his entire approach. I don't want that. I don't want people following somebody who is going to do that. So I really hope he checks how he currently is acting, and really rethinks it. Him not wanting to talk to Destiny is 100% because Destiny is able to expose something in Vaush. It's kind of I don't want to dude. I do not want to talk about this as if they are like superheroes in a game, or like it's a villain and a supervillain and like Superman and Kryptonite. But Destiny is that person who can really expose Vaush when he's playing rhetorical games, when he's not basing things in fact. These right-wingers are too dumb to do it. They don't know how to debate. But Destiny knows because everything Vaush does, he learned from Destiny. So like not when Vaush made that decision, like I'm not going to talk to Destiny ever again. That was optically for him. He knows he can't stand up to what Destiny does optically. When it comes to actually winning debates. Whenever they talk, he can't justify what he's saying. And I have a lot of criticisms of Destiny, by the way. I think he's way too obsessed with logic to actually work in politics. I think he's way too obsessed with that, and he doesn't give credence to any other styles of thinking because he's really principled and really idealistic in how he thinks the world should function. Politics is a dirty game, as I tried to talk to him about when we debated or whatever. But yeah, I just don't like this road Vaush is going down. He needs to be checked.
supposed to
what
be.
happened.
If the
If there
court
was
agreed,
footage,
you
here's what you're doing. This is the equivalent of what you're doing. So let me just demonstrate this, right? Let's say that a man shoots somebody in cold blood, and there's 52 videos of it, and everybody sees it, and then the court says like, oh, he.
Destiny has the habit of acting like a 13-year-old edgy, freaking edgy 13-year-old Xbox gamer on Twitter. I don't know why he refuses to, I don't know, not be dumb, but like he purposely self-inflicts damage on his reputation and on his own like ideology, I think.
So let me just demonstrate this, right? Let's say that a man shoots somebody in cold blood, and there's 52 videos of it, and everybody sees it, and then the court says like, oh, he did it, and he gets locked in jail. And Vaush is saying, well, what if they would have decided something different? Well, it's hard to imagine that. I mean, if there was different evidence or something, then sure. You're telling me if the courts would have decided something different on the North Carolina case, or different in the Trump case, or different in the Bush v. Gore case, then would it be different? I don't know. Maybe if they're looking over different evidence or something, but we can all see like the evidence.
Oh no, I think. Oh, okay. I'm trying to think back because I don't remember every Vaush and Destiny debate. I'm trying to think back, but there have been wins and losses on both sides. I just don't have it in front of me. All I have right now in my brain is this right here.
They spoke about. So we can all read the argument. Hold on, let me finish. You asked me. Okay, I'm specifically addressing the things you're specifically saying. Okay.
Oh yeah, Destiny platformed the rural progressive. He platformed me, a rural progressive. I don't want people calling me the rural. I don't even know what rural means. But yeah, he platformed me. Therefore, he's better. Therefore, he's better.
In a certain way. So right now, the onus is on you to tell us, just like it is on the Republicans right now, to think that Trump had the election stolen from them. The onus is on them to tell us why did all the judges get it wrong.
Yeah, dealing with lefties, Destiny is unable to be like regular. He can't talk to lefties.
You to tell us, even with a one fascist Scalia, there were still 6 other Supreme Court justices that disagreed with you in the Bush v. Gore case. You need to tell us why they're wrong without alleging some vague conspiracy with zero evidence, which is the exact same thing that Trump and the rest of the Troubles do right now against our current system that said that he lost the election.
So first of all, your spiel there had little to nothing to do with what I said, so I'm not sure what's relevant. And second of all,
oh my god.
Okay.
Vaush won't. Why? It's a good question. If 6 other justices ruled in the same way, how was Scalia a fascist? Vaush is unwilling to even try to justify what he's saying.
Yeah, sure. You
Beautiful.
Okay. So Katarana, you can go. But I just gotta let you know, like, I had no idea that your hand was up until someone in the chat let me know. You gotta like put lights on. It's very difficult.
My lights are on. I'm just black. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
okay,
this is very difficult. So anyway, go ahead.
Okay.
Hold it in front of the camera.
This lovers quarrel, I'm loving it. Content, beautiful, but like, can't we get to something where it's not just like Destiny versus Vaush jerk off time?
We're discussing the point.
He came on here to talk with me. He's made accusation after accusation, walks back attack after attack.
No, but
great.
Anything else?
Great. Thank you. Vaush and Destiny, finish what you were doing.
Well, I'll just finish the point because it seemed like we're never going to go anywhere with this. So Destiny has retreated to the previous position, which I already indicated was pretty unjustifiable, that legality doesn't determine whether or not something is or is not conspiratorial or anti-democracy. And he can't seem to answer whether or not the North Carolina voter ID laws would be something he would consider to be racist in intent if the courts had not ruled in the way they were, even if the evidence was the same. So there's plenty of documentation out there. I'm sure plenty of people watching are too young to remember any of this. I
already talked about my position on this. You have to look at the entire structuring of the court system over time. And if it's done through democratic means and whatever, it's hard to say it's fascist. You can just say it's anti-democratic and authoritarian if they make a ruling like that. But if it's done through democratic means, it's hard to call it's hard to just say it's a fascist thing outright.
It's like 4 at the time, so I had to read about it afterwards. Hold on. With regards to the butterfly ballots, there was like obviously.
And like I said before, for the new people watching, every one of these things has context that you would need to go down. You can't even talk about it in a hypothetical bubble unless if like you go really deep into it. You can't really say a policy is fascist or not. I don't want to do that. It's pointless to me.
Shady shit
There's
going
too
on
much you got to go through.
Clear intent.
Nobody agrees on what that word means.
Intent, there was motive, and there was no other justification for the things that they did. It wasn't like there was some other conceivable explanation. It was pretty targeted.
Why did the court disagree with you?
So hold on. I don't have.
Yeah, when Destiny sided with I hated when Pac-Man did that thing too. When he with like zero research, when Pac-Man called Vaush's charity stream, he called the organization bad with like zero research, and it was it ended up being fake what Pac-Man said. But then Vaush called Pac-Man a Zionist because Vaush has the habit of using really hyperbolic labels. So like it's hard for me to find an interaction with all these personalities in which one side clearly comes out on top without losing at all. I can't really think of many where some people don't take at least some like optics losses.
the individual rulings of all the justices, but I'm not appealing to legality to determine whether or not something is anti-democracy or not. I think that every judge on earth can rule against me, and I can still make a compelling argument for why I believe something is conspiratorial or why I think they did something anti-democratic.
Okay, so
Why
you
did
do the
all of
exact same thing as every single.
Hold on. It's okay. You'll get your chance soon.
What are
buddy.
we
Don't
even
worry.
talking about?
Much in the same way that I think that Evo Morales' Supreme Court voting in favor of the constitutional reforms they did were anti-democratic, in spite of the fact that all of them agreed. How could they have all agreed? Am I alleging conspiracy? No. I just think different people have different priorities and different ways of seeing the world. I am not in the heads of all of the Supreme Court judges back 21 years ago, so I can't specifically allege their intents. But the idea that I'm like out here in the blue making the claim that there was funny business back in Florida,
Well,
or that
Cockeyed Rooster, that's why I was so upset with Pac-Man, because I usually regard him as somebody who really cares about being really spot on about what he says. I didn't think he would just fire off something like that. It does make you question people's motives when they do that, because that was such a deviation from the norm. Like, if Pac-Man is easier on Israel on certain topics, he shouldn't be called a Zionist. That's really bad. But, like, you have to question, like, why was he so quick to fire on that? Why did he say, like, oh, Vaush, you're supporting terrorist groups or whatever? That's a really loaded claim to make about somebody with little research. Like, if I look up if I do a 2-minute Google search about someone, I'm not gonna make a big statement like Pac-Man did. I mean, especially somebody, like I said, who I usually hold in a really high regard.
Allege their intents, but I am not in the heads of all of the Supreme Court judges back 21 years ago, so I can't specifically allege their intents. But the idea that I'm like out here in the blue making the claim that there was funny business back in Florida.
Vaush would have an argument to make if he didn't keep on bringing up the conspiracy about the Florida thing. That is thoroughly debunked, and there is no reason to even believe. I hope Vaush walked it back today when he was streaming.
That there was some conspiracy or deliberate intent to influence the vote is, well, it's very funny. And it's certainly not a position I would expect to come from a progressive or even a person willing to vote for Joe Biden, but it owned the left briefly. So we're never actually going to...
Hold on, you can keep ad homing over and over again. I'm not going to say you're waiting to finish your arguments, okay? You have not given a single reason for why.
Okay, Vaush, you gotta let Destiny in. Vaush, letting Destiny in. Vaush, we're letting Destiny in.
It's okay.
Yeah, okay, yeah, don't just cut him off if he starts ad homing. It's really creepy. I don't know why he's like so obsessed with like making the personal attacks. If you are going to disagree with the courts and you're going to levy an extreme accusation, not only are these courts wrong, but I believe that Bush is...
Vaush doubled down on the Bush thing that is thoroughly debunked and not true whatsoever, that there's a conspiracy.
If you are going to disagree with the courts and you're going to levy an extreme accusation, not only are these courts wrong, but I believe that Bush is fascist for this particular reason related to the courts being wrong, you better have a really good reason for why they were wrong. And you can't just say, well, I disagree with them. I think it was in a Twitter thread I read a long time ago, but I don't remember. That's all I'm saying. So in the future, maybe be like, I don't know how I feel about Bush. Instead of coming out here so strongly asserting, oh, I'm pretty sure him and Scalia were fascists. Well, why? Well, because of the Florida stuff. Well, why?
I noticed he's referring to other points.
Pac-Man supported the Bolivian coup. Well, I think Morales should be criticized. I think what he did was anti-democratic. Would I say it's an authoritarian fascist thing to do? Probably not. I think it was anti-democratic, and I think he should have chose a successor. I'm also against the coup that did take place for a couple of reasons, but I'm not happy with how Morales handled the entire thing. If his party had that much power, then having a successor, or, you know, if he had unfinished business, it shouldn't rely on his image, his personality, for his party to win again. A successor should have been chosen right away, and that's what happened already. Or, I mean, after the fact, after the coup, and once they had elections again, his successor won, right? So...
Now, this would be a gish gallop if you actually wanted to see
it's
it.
It's not a gish gallop. Okay,
so
I
have to really
same points. Okay. These are the exact same points. Everyone here can hear the conversation. We're going around on the exact same points. You don't know.
Back to earlier points because you ran away from this one.
I'm literally replying to exactly what you're talking about.
Election was like the result of election tampering is hardly a unique position. Because I'm not familiar with the Supreme Court documentation does not make my arguments less salient.
It's hardly unique among like less people on Twitter.
Your argument is
you need a common position.
Wait, hold on. Just to be clear, Destiny's position on this is literally, in order for you to allege conspiratorial intent, you need to tell me the exact motives of every judge who voted against it. So this is clearly not a counter position being taken in good faith. One being taken out.
Dude, there are so many other world. If I was the guy that could see in the Avengers movie like 50 million other stories or whatever, there's like 49 million of them where you're just like a Trump saying all of these exact same arguments about how Trump was robbed of the election. I guess you'll never see that. I mean, peace guarders.
So again, it's funny that you would accuse me of making
exact same arguments. All the Trump.
There's a systemic gravitation that generates the propensity of the existence of Vaush's claim taking place at some point in history. We have a clear line of how the butterfly ballots were actually initiated, and implemented. Unless if you think the Democratic Party from that area was pressured by some outside force that hasn't been even somewhat declared by them, but
It's the exact same arguments, word for word almost. Like you could copy paste these, you could control plus V
all,
these, and it
all
would fit
arguments
perfectly
that
for
there was
Trump.
a problem with all arguments that there are problems with the judicial result and conspiracy underlying behavior of the people who went to that court are equally bad. All of them are equally unjustifiable. This is the mind of a radical centrist, by the way. He doesn't actually believe what he's saying, but it does help him
Radical
along the left a little
centrist.
bit. Just I want you, and this is the last thing I'll say legitimately, and then I'll see the point of whatever. He's saying that
but Vaush has admitted that he's willing to say things he doesn't really mean if he thinks it's rhetorically effective, and if because he does believe to decent levels that many means do justify the ends when it comes to how he talks to people. Like, I've heard him in debates with conservatives. I've heard him just make stuff up, and then, oh my god, I forget which debate it was. He made up a study. Who was he debating? Does anybody remember this moment? He made up a study that he saw once. And the conservative said, show me the study, show me the proof. And Vaush said, I don't need to show you the study. I have it memorized. Remember that? He says that a lot. It's funny, but like, I don't like saying things that I don't understand or know just to win points in a debate. You should be able to argue your points in a rhetorically effective way. And I'm okay, like I said, with drawing emotion from people and stuff like that. A perfect truth is hard to reach in politics. But that level of just like, yeah, ha ha ha, ha ha, funny, I have it all memorized. Like, I don't like that. Cockeyed Rooster, thank you so much for the $5. Bro, calling people centrist is the new you're a fascist. Yeah, online where all people are a part of political extremes. If I call somebody a centrist, they look at me like I'm going crazy. Like, are you kidding me?
the accusation, which I've substantiated, by the way, the fact that there was no other reason to implement.
I'll try to find the debate I'm talking about. Was it with the fascist guy, the guy from that one debate panel show with the red? What's his name? Oh my god.
With those butterfly ballots, it was done by a person with clear intent, motive, blah, blah, blah. That accusation is the same as what Trump has done. Is so.
I've read all theory. I'm trying to think of the debate I'm talking about. What's that guy's name? He uses it as an ironic name. The fascist guy, Papa Fascist. Was it that one?
Flagrantly anti-intellectual. It could only be made either by an idiot or a person who's
These aren't even like arguments. It's just random ad homs. This works so much better like when you're just doing the YouTube format and screaming at your audience. But like if you're actually talking to other people, you should try to respond to the arguments instead of just like reaching and reaching for like these weird ad homs. No, like
well, to be fair, Destiny called me a liar, so.
You're the only one in here that is digging so hard for these ad homs.
Okay.
And Booksmarts doesn't ever schedule anything with me. We email like every couple of months about doing something, but I guess it just never happens.
Were there any other conversations people wanted to have? I mean, he just wanted to talk with me. Do you want a private room, Destiny? Is that what you came here to ask me for?
I just want to make one point, and I'll drop this point entirely, and we can move on. But saying that there's no other reason is what you're saying is there's no other reason that I can think of. There's no other reason than conspiratorial intent that you can think of, and that's
you can apply that criticism
but that's
to
a fucking leap, dude. That's a real fucking leap.
That's a counter argument
and the fact that you don't
really
recognize this is kind of silly. But I'll drop it, and we can move on to another topic. Thank you.
You can make that counterpoint to any claim.
I just have one thing.
But if you make a loaded claim like that, you should probably be aware of the situation. And Vaush's own subreddit debunked Vaush thoroughly.
I'd like to say real quick, it's just an aside. Destiny, I'm a farmer from Nebraska, and I heard you were from Nebraska at one point. So whenever you say something I agree with, I always think that's the Nebraska talk.
His live today was emotional. In what way?
The endorsements today for really getting the cream of the crop up here to agree.
Vaush,
well, I mean, the king of extreme. I mean, what can I say? I'm pretty awesome.
Fanatic, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that, man, there's literally just one point that I really feel like you keep saying, going back to the same argument about like trying to create this comparison between like the idea that for us to be able to say that this thing, nothing untoward happened. It's not even that nothing untoward happened altogether. It's there's just so much middle ground between the idea of someone being a fascist and what you're saying.
We're like 20 points ago now.
No, we're not 20. No. We are not 20 points in. We're not 20 points in. This has been the same conversation. This has been the main point that's been underscoring this entire conversation. It's literally been this whole time trying to get you to explain what it is about Bush that's fascist. And this is the first point that you brought in. And the way that you've been trying to defend it, we've been trying to make the same point the entire time, that clearly the Supreme Court didn't agree with you. And it's not just that the Supreme Court didn't agree with you. It's that the Supreme Court disagreed with you while we didn't see any evidence of any Bush having any control over the Supreme Court such that it would allow him to subvert the
this is
democratic
another
process.
reality
So
equals
that,
anti-democratic.
so that right there, that distinction, when you keep retreating back to the point of, well, yeah, you guys are making the analogy of like, I mean, you guys are making the argument that just because it's legal, that's not what we're just saying. It's not just because it's legal. It's because it's because it was upheld by the Supreme Court, and we have no evidence.
That's a legality argument.
It's these two.
It's funny. It's funny that you're telling me
It's
to
not.
not actually
No.
making
Stop. It's not just that. You got to let me finish the statement. These two things are working. These two things are working concomitantly. It's not just that it was upheld by the Supreme Court. It was that it was upheld by the Supreme Court, and we don't have any evidence that the Supreme Court was affected or controlled or did anything subversive. Those things together are what are causing that. So when you bring up these other analogies, most of them haven't even fit.
I don't think I've been bringing up that many analogies. I think the only one that I brought up is the North Carolina voter ID law, which I think accurately demonstrated the ways in which something can be anti-democratic, whether or not the courts end up agreeing with or disagreeing with it. Not to mention, I mentioned Jim Crow earlier. I tried to describe the reasons why I thought the Bush was fascistic, but I didn't really get a chance to because we got hung up at the first point. A point so self-evident and simplistic, by the way, that it was generally accepted as a common talking point amongst Democrats in 2000, people who today I would consider conservative, given how far the Overton window has shifted to the left in that time. But since then, I suppose it's become a contentious point amongst conservatives and people acting like them for the sake of voting to the left. So we're not actually going to be able to move any further on this, and I can't actually respond to like 16 people jumping in at every point that I have to make. So with all that being said, do we want to disentangle me slightly from the subject of this panel so we can move on? Because if we don't, it's going to be in a loop.
What are we talking about now? Is it about fascism or about the claims he made?
The next hour.
Okay.
I would like that.
I'm not even
please.
making money from this. I should have turned on my stream if I knew it was going to be this.
It should. That's. We would have enjoyed the
I know viewership, Brian Case. I'm sorry, that was rude of me. Next time I'll turn it on.
He literally cried multiple times as he vented his frustration with spending hours making debate reviews in order to give people advice and they don't take it.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so
Book smarts.
Prime, can I just say one?
Okay.
Can I please say one thing? I've got my hand up forever. My fucking dress strap broke waiting to talk, and I had to go change. So like, here's the thing. I think it's a little like, and I was listening to it the whole time when I was changing, and I kind of couldn't believe what I heard. The fact that something happens through a democratic process does not mean that the outcome of that thing isn't fascist. In fact, the way that fascists historically have gone and risen to power is because they exploit the democratic systems and mechanisms within like a democratic system in order to consolidate power and then implement policies that are anti-democratic, and that can be reinforced like by democratic means. Like this happens all the time. This has been the stated policy of the—
Well, at that point, we just should stop using the word fascist whatsoever, huh? To describe anything but people.
the GOP for a long time, and I feel like I was taking—
How do we know if a ruling?
crazy pills because I'm like, do people not like
Maddie,
acknowledge
no,
that?
you're just
Do people
saying—
not— that happens
I just
regularly?
addressed
Like
that.
that is something that happens routinely. And here's the thing: there's been plenty of examples in history. Fanatic, you can have it chance in a second. I'm fucking talking. Like there are so many examples of things that at the time were upheld through a democratic process, whether it was through a judge.
We have to make a decision here. Are we talking about fascism as in Hitler and Mussolini, or are we also including Ronald Reagan as a fascist? Like, do we have different words for those people and for Reagan? Where is the populist aspect? Like, there needs to be another word or something. I don't know. Word labels are dumb.
Whether it was through the legislature, but that then later was repealed or whatever because they say, you know what, that actually was anti-democratic or that was preventing people from voting. That's why things like voter ID laws have been passed and then brought back, or a lot of them are still in place. But those are patently anti-democratic, but they still passed in a democratic system. But like those are fascist. So I don't know.
If fascism is broad, then we just shouldn't use it. If the label has such minor utility, then we just shouldn't use it.
I feel like this
If
is
it's
we're just
that broad, if fascism is that broad, then I can call Stalin a socialist because socialism is that broad too.
Proxy fight between Vaush and Destiny.
I just came on to
and I
relax.
just wish you guys
He's been talking about the points this whole time.
Maddie, you literally didn't contribute. I don't know how you didn't hear what I just said. This is insane to me. You literally just made the same point that I already addressed. It's not just that one thing. It's not just that it passed a democratic process. It's not just the Supreme Court upheld it. It would have to be, you'd have to show that Bush had some sort of undue influence over the Supreme Court such that he could cause them to do something subversive in order for you to say that it was fascist.
Because for something to be fascist, if a court ruling is a fascist court ruling, that doesn't mean the court ruling says we are going to change the voting process in an area. That is anti-democratic. But having one tenet of fascism doesn't mean you are fascistic or you are a fascist. Just being anti-democratic doesn't work. You can have the policy outcomes, I think, should be separated from the label, from the origins of the ideas and everything.
Court, or you have to make the argument that the Supreme Court themselves are being fascist, which neither of those statements are being made. So what you just said is complete nonsense. You're not even contributing.
How does persuasion come into it being fascist or not?
So we'll go to Nacho, and then we'll see if GSU, Pisco, and Vivian, who I had muted for the longest time,
True pill, by the way.
So Nacho.
So I was trying to figure out, like, let's say we grant you this one thing, like.
Wait, no, fascism isn't immoral. Are you kidding me? We can have one supreme ruler who is simply good. We can. What are you talking about? We can just have one supreme ruler that is so awesome, and although they control it, like, dude, it's not bad. Everybody can have their own states. It would be so cool.
That's why I was bringing that up. Like, how many of these things? First of all, like, how many of these things does it have to cover before it's like?
I don't know. You might want to contact Richard Wolff about that socialism thing.
Before it's considered fascist, and then do you have anything else to point to reason as far as like reasons why you think that Bush is fascist?
And Fanatic, you've been muted. All right, keep going.
Is that me?
Yeah, I guess that's you.
Yeah. Yes.
I don't think there's a hard line on how many points. Anytime you're trying to ascribe like political effects,
you can make an argument that some countries. You can make an argument that freaking Italy and whatever and Germany would have fallen apart without their dictatorial leaders, without their unilateral strength keeping them alive on the world stage. You can make a lot of arguments for fascism, for unilateral power at that level. What does fascism mean? Who knows? We all have different meanings. Whoa! Fascism is everything that's bad. Socialism is everything that's good. Socialism is everything that's bad. Fascism is also communism. But communism is not fascism. But also liberalism is socialism. And Marxism is Black Lives Matter. That's what label arguments sound like. I just hate labels so much. Holy crap.
Given candidate or whatever, it's going to be a super like complicated and nuanced and highly subjective process. So I just don't have an answer to that. With regards to Bush, after the anti-democratic stuff, the main stuff that I was going to reinforce was hyper-nationalism, xenophobia, the deference to religious authority to justify persecution of other groups, and there's a whole bunch of stuff involving Muslims in the Iraq War and war crimes and the camp we have in Cuba, whose name I'm blanking on right now, and there was stuff I was going to feed into with that, and then later in towards his presidency, if I remember correctly, and I can look this up again in the future, I feel like there were more overt populist messages being delivered by his party that he signed off on. Not like he didn't literally sign up, but like he sort of led in with them and passively enabled them as the president. He was nowhere near as much of a fascist as Trump. I mean, we're almost talking night and day, but I feel like the behavior that he engaged in really laid the groundwork. You also have the Guantanamo Bay, thank you, I can't believe I forgot that. You also have stuff like the Patriot Act, which, I mean, to be fair, I guess that just every president supports it now, but at the time it was a pretty astonishing like retraction of our civil rights. And there was a lot of other stuff too that I remembered an hour ago, I forget now, but stuff like that. I think he lays groundwork, and that's the problem. I don't think neoconservatism and fascism are two like really distinct things, which is the reason why a bunch of Republicans who used to be neocons are now like total full-on like practically QAnon big lie sucking Trump's dick types. It seems like it's an easy line to blur.
But those people, if the president was a normal neocon, would go right back to that. They are following their political incentives. They are power hungry. That doesn't mean they are fascist. You can say they are fascist enablers, but that definition does matter. Them alone wouldn't be demanding the same things as they need to demand with Trump leading the party. The reason so many Republican lawmakers went this direction is because they have literally no choice. If they don't support the big lie, if they don't support the idea that the election actually went to Trump, then they're going to lose their elections. They're doing it out of survival, political necessity. They aren't doing it organically. That's a bit like, that's why these terms need to be kept different. Is Mitt Romney a fascist? He's not going along with the big lie. Who is a good middle case? How many Republican officials actively support the big lie?
And that's the reason why I called Bush fascistic. I think the same criticisms apply further back, like more, probably lesser so with time, though I feel like Bush Sr. and Nixon stand out to me as people who are probably aberrantly fascist leaning, respectively, within their own time periods.
Bush Sr. and Nixon are also fascists. What kind of a populist was Nixon?
Then you go further and further back, and it becomes less and less applicable. But even then, like back in the 1950s and stuff, with all the McCarthy era, like Cold War, Red Scare type stuff, there were a lot of really obvious like the Frankfurt conspiracy came about back then.
You can say, yeah, McCarthy is somebody you can actually put the label like fascist on.
The idea that there were leftist intellectuals in academia and government that were like, I mean, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, maybe Jewish, that were controlling like American intellectual like elites and like driving college students to be anti-American. Stuff like this, stuff like that makes me think like leaning fascist. And where the line is, I can't really say, but I can see the pattern now in hindsight, now that I live in 2021, and it led up to Trump, and that was a very dangerous path to walk. That's the overall argument. And I guess it would take 80 million hours to substantiate all of that, but that's the broader argument that I'd make.
Okay, GSU.
Yeah, so I had some points made like an hour ago. It's annoying to me that people are saying, hey, this is like a proxy war. Like, first off, Vaush said some things and I wanted to interrogate what he said, and that's kind of what started all this. So this is not some, hey, let's proxy war with Destiny and Vaush. I actually was like trying to get him to defend the statements that he made. But the thing that I think you haven't addressed, Vaush, and the
Wait,
thing that
okay, the whole point of this cringe fest was don't call everyone a fascist. Labels are cringe. Okay, he wins the debate. I hate the labels.
Bring up like an hour ago when I got muted. But it's exactly what.
If nobody knows what your labels mean, they have no utility. You shouldn't be using them whatsoever. It's anti-pragmatic to use the word fascist. You need to show people why things are bad. 99% of Americans don't see fascism as bad. They don't even know what it means. And if they do think it's bad, many of them think it's bad because it's a left-wing thing.
Fanatic just said.
They think it's on the left.
With the thing in North Carolina, there's an actual.
They think Black Lives Matter are fascists, for example.
It's exactly what Fanatic just said. So with the thing in North Carolina, there's an actual causal link that we can draw to, right? We can say that they requested voter data and then they made a decision solely based off that voter data that was like surgically precise to disenfranchise Black voters. What I think everybody has been saying to you that I don't think you've addressed is that there seems to not be this case in the example for the Florida thing. So we can say that Jeb Bush was in power, but there seems to be no causal link that we can draw from Jeb Bush to the state secretary that was over the election, to the election being carried out, to the judges that justified the election. There seems to be no causal link at all to call this anti-democratic because none of that evidence exists. And that's what I wanted to ask you like an hour ago. It sounds like what you're saying is, hey, it was his brother. Like, you know, it's got to be something there, right? And what we're saying is that bar is so low that it's disgusting to use rhetoric as it's fascistic based off
anti-democratic. It's about using the evidence that you have to the best of your ability. You're not always going to have stuff as clear cut as getting like this search history of the state legislators indicating that they were.
If it's not clear cut, don't use the loaded term. If it's not clear cut, do not do that. Do not leave room for bad outcomes with your rhetoric. Just simply stay away from it. There's no reason to do it. If you care about optics, choose the good optic. Do the optics, Vaush. Come on, do the optics. Do the optics thing.
Looking up what types of like voter IDs Black people use.
My argument of why, excuse me. My argument for why George Bush is a fascist requires 20 minutes. It requires no, wait, what's a good time? My argument for why George Bush is a fascist requires 2 hours of explaining what I think is what I think the label fascism means. And also it requires 2 more hours of debating the term fascism. And then after we decide on the broad term of fascism, then we can talk more about why George Bush is a fascist. So beautiful. I am the rhetoric master.
It's not always going to be that clear cut. So when it comes to the Bush v. Gore situation, I'm far from the first person to make this claim. It's not just that it was convenient, and convenient it was. It was that there seemed to be no other reason to put forward the butterfly ballots, and the butterfly ballots were so specifically and oddly designed. You can look them up right now. The way they organized, like the listing
by Democrats
of the candidates it wasn't just unusual; it was unprecedented. Nobody did it that way, and you have to think like why?
Unless if the lady that did it was like a secret spy who registered as a Democrat just to overturn the election in Florida.
Do this unbelievably weird thing. The only logical explanation is the one which is the outcome it led to, which is that people who otherwise would have voted for Gore, the boomers in Florida, then voted for another candidate because their strained cataract-ridden eyeballs couldn't actually see the script on the page. And there's been plenty of analysis to indicate that did have that effect. Now, I can't look into their brains and tell you what they were thinking. I can't prove it, because very rarely can you prove intent. You usually need like written statements.
I'm fine with Vaush calling Trump a fascist. There is a lot there. I'm fine with him calling Hawley, and maybe Ted Cruz fascists. There is some utility in that. No, Vaush is owning it, everything he said. Isn't this a part of conservatives' power? Yes, the left, the thing is, the left are bad. The left are bad at labels. They keep everything super simple. We shouldn't get complicated. We should use words that are going to be received well by people. Like I said, a lot of Americans grew up being taught fascism is left-wing. A lot of old political spectrums had anarchism on the far right, and they had fascism and communism on the far left. This country's whole being is ingrained in the idea that socialism is evil. Because, you know, the spectrum is right-wing is less government, left-wing is more government, of course. Knowing this, knowing these roots are dug deep, I personally, when I have the opportunity to move people over to my side, I will never bring up socialism as the first topic. I will always talk about concepts. I'll talk about problems, and I'll talk about how I want to fix those problems. And people typically agree. If I tell somebody we need to decommodify something, they might not agree if I say it's a socialist policy. So I stay away from that level. We shouldn't use fascism or that word, that term, whatever. Don't use fascism if people don't have a good understanding. And if it's, dude, when it comes to fascism, academics who study this their entire lives have issues labeling people fascist. It's a really hard thing to do. We need to keep it simple. Our messaging needs to be focused on actually moving the foundations of how people think to our direction. Like, holy crap, dude. I don't know academics that can properly put this label on people. YouTube commentators shouldn't be having this big ego to think they can. Stay out of it. There's no utility in using that word unless if you are really freaking sure about it. If fascist only means bad to 0.000005% of the population, and people who do think it's bad don't use it right, the utility of that word barely even exists.
Or like they need a confession or something like that. But I think that's a fair, logical understanding.
Go up to people. Yeah, go up to any American and call people fascist. Just see how it works. See how good it works. Say your policies are good because they're socialist, and they're bad because they're fascist. See how well that works.
The events that took place, and this is a fairly well-researched topic too. Like, this is a fairly, as I understood it, agreed upon assessment of the 2000 election. By the way, is my mic still doing the thing? Do I need to come back?
A little bit. No, it's much better.
Mostly much better.
One second.
Okay. He'll come back in, but I changed the thing.
I don't even in academic settings, I can talk and be like, hey, I think they enable fascism because we broadly know what that is. But I'd much prefer this enables authoritarianism, this is anti-democratic, this is anti-freedom. The labels make sense, you can explain it really well. If you say something's anti-democratic, people know what that means. People typically know what that means. If you say something is authoritarian or it's anti-freedom, people know what that means. If you say something is fascist, you don't want to have to explain your complicated terminology whenever you have a conversation with somebody.
And that helps.
Be on his.
Yeah, he's coming back.
Yeah, it's
okay.
way better.
MLs aren't real, so good for them. Whatever those are. What is it? Major League Baseball? What are even MLs? What's a Tank E? It's pretty crazy. Is Tank E a sequel to the movie WALL-E? Ever see WALL-E? Is that what Tank E means? Is it like instead of WALL-E, it's a robot tank? That's pretty cool. So that's what I never knew what a Tank E was before. Now I know what Tank E is. The sequel to WALL-E.
So it was way better. I did change the region for you, and it's way better since. So finish up
Sorry,
the point.
this Discord really hates me. I don't know why, and I don't know how to fix it. So
yeah. So okay, let's go to Pisco, and before we do,
can we just all go along? We
first I
ran
wanna-
fair things. We all want to make America great again, right?
A little tank that could.
I just want to say quickly, if you're enjoying this content, maybe give me a follow. Hey, like this format that I have, this open panel format allows for these moments to happen. So if you're enjoying these moments, hit that follow button, make sure notifications are on, because I do this 6 days a week. And you know what else would help, right? If you're maybe sub to the channel, I give you a lot. I do give you a lot for you, right? For a lot of bang for your buck. Sub to the channel, gift bits, or gift subs will be very helpful. Thank you. All right, go ahead, Pisco.
Yeah, I want to thank
the best. None has been better.
I want to thank Vaush. I mean, it's not easy to be on a panel, have everyone attacking you from all angles. So appreciate you being here. It's a lot of fun. But I think that we want more as regards to evidence of Bush actively and maliciously influencing the election with the purpose to screw Gore out of a victory. Now, I think that there can be some debate. There's some papers or some research done to suggest that Gore was in fact the winner of that election, but that's not enough evidence to suggest that Bush or any people around a circle intentionally made it so, or intentionally changed the law to have that effect. By all accounts, this election was extremely close, up to a couple hundred votes. No one could have predicted that it would come down to those things. And this situation ended up having a new law being put in place to change those formats in Florida. It's one of the reasons why Florida results are so quick nowadays. What we're looking for is it's not enough to know that something is gone through legal process to know that it's quote unquote democratic, but you need some separate evidence, I think, of intent with respect to this particular passage of this law. And we don't have that here. And you would never accept that of a Trump person who alleged impropriety in the 2020 election only by pointing at a law and throwing up their hands and saying, what other purpose could it possibly have?
No, wait.
Think
So
about the
to be
2019
clear-
law. Yep.
So to be clear, if there was a law that was passed that specifically seemed to lead to an outcome that favored Democratic
talk about
voters, hold on. If such a law was passed and the way they achieved that favorability was by altering the ballot in such a way as to get voters to vote for candidates they didn't actually want, therefore skewing the total, and there was no possible explanation for why they would format things in that way except for the outcome of that explicit bias, and all of this was being facilitated by a relative of the favored presidential candidate, I promise you from the bottom of my heart, if a Democrat did that, I would have a problem with it. Okay?
Let me give you the example.
Tanky is the sequel where Wally only
to allow illegal voters to vote and to make it easier to rig the election. And that's the purpose they did it. It's not the only state they point to. But what I'm
Is
taking
there
issue
any
with
evidence
is
that it's led to that outcome? Is there
as
any
much evidence as
plausible
you have.
explanation?
As much
Wait,
evidence
hold on,
as you
wait,
have.
No, hold on. I do have
I
evidence.
think I'm on a panel with Pisco on Friday. I think. Here's 3 topics. Let me know what you guys think about these 3 topics. Friday night panel hosted by Hans. I think this is happening. Topic number 1. Okay, these are the 3 topics. I forget what order. Should we eliminate the filibuster? Should we add seats to the Supreme Court? And the final topic is... Those are 2 of the topics. And also, should we abolish the Electoral College? So that debate panel is happening Friday. It's 3v3 format. Three of these. 3 of these versus 3 conservatives.
Wait, hold on. I do have evidence because the percentage of people who then reported they misvoted after the 2000 election was statistically significant, far greater than it is in the average election. So I have evidence.
That's what they say about this one.
Wait,
That's
hold on,
exactly
wait,
what they say about
wait,
these
hold on.
ones.
Please. That's what they say. But
is not anti-democratic.
hold on. So that's
an
what they.
increase in democracy.
That's what they say, but I guarantee you, Republicans have supplied no evidence that it led to an increase in the amount of illegal voting. That's a fact.
I'm sorry, no.
So-
But what you said is voter voter issues related to ballots that did increase in 2000 in certain places, and the Republicans point to that, and that's their quote unquote statistical analysis that something's afoot.
There were voter issues in Pennsylvania. In one county, there was an election decided by like 5 votes between a Democrat and a Republican. I forget what office it was for. I think it might have been for the House. It was a really red district. This was a really conservative Democrat. The conservative Democrat barely won. In this county, a lot of voters had their ballots thrown out because of an issue. The wrong names were printed on the ballot sheet, and a lot of Republicans used this coincidence as reason to say the entire election was like fraudulent. So all the percentages were messed up and all that stuff. The Democrats still won. Republicans actually held up the entire process of getting that Democrat actually certified into office. But Pisco is 100% right that Vaush is pointing to these things in a way that is not correct. Nothing Vaush said so far, in my mind, justifies the claim he's making of conspiracy with the butterfly ballots. He doesn't have any reasoning for it. He has no proof. A day later, today, he still had no proof. His subreddit has a post with over 1,000 upvotes that disproves thoroughly everything Vaush said about the butterfly ballots. So I really hope to see him respond. I want to see his response to everybody.
So I would need to look at that then, because I mean I would need to review that evidence before I could really factor it in. So you're telling me then that the extension of the mail-in voting time led to a specific increase in the amount of voting errors with the Republican voters in that state?
The Republicans say that there are more errors.
I'm not asking what they say. They'll say whatever. I mean, like, is there evidence to that? If so,
there's evidence that there are, by virtue of extending universal mail-in voting, there are more errors with respect to.
But is it errors that deliberately target a particular outcome? Because the way the butterfly ballots were oriented did lead.
Prove what you said. Prove what you just said. Prove what you just said.
A confusing ballot doesn't help anybody. It's just confusing for everybody. It's going to fuck it up for everybody. So you can't say it helped with one person.
Yeah, and 2 quick fact checks. I linked the ballot in chat. These are not impossible to read ballots. Okay, you are right. Anybody
I didn't say they were impossible to read.
They don't seem
jumping in with a.
Yeah, that's good. But a large part of it, of his audience does, and I want that part to be reduced. And also, Destiny has this issue with his audience where a lot of them just agree with whatever he said. They all attacked me. A lot of them attacked me, and a lot of them said I did a good job talking to Destiny, and that he was very uncharitable to when I talked to him. And that is true as well. It might not be Vaush viewers. It might be Destiny viewers upvoting it. Who knows? Anything. Nothing is real.
The wrong point, Matt. He had his time to quiet down. He's here.
I'm just going to keep talking when he starts ad-homing. So number one, the ballots aren't impossible to read. Now, whether or not you want to say, people said that they had trouble, voting or not. Okay, sure. But like, that's not that bar of like deliberately misleading somebody that you seem to be trying to set up on the other side. Number one. Number two, the person that designed this ballot was a Democrat. Teresa Lepore was not a Republican. She wasn't a Republican operative. She was a Democrat. So these are like,
who signed off on
I
that?
watch Destiny and Vaush. I watch basically every video. I watch 90% of their content. So like, I'm in their audience as well, I guess.
Actual implementation. And
Also,
also,
why is the person
that
signed off on it more important than the person that actually created the ballot?
Wait, the person who signs off on it and actually implements it is infinitely more important. There are probably many ballot designs.
Except if there was the other case where a Republican had made the ballots and a Democrat had signed off.
Also, wait,
made it in
is way more design or the placement of the votes?
She literally designed the ballot, the one that was used in this particular election.
Can I see that? Can you put that in the chat?
Okay. Didn't you know? Yeah. I mean, you're alleging something particularly big.
No, I didn't think. Wait, hold on. No, I don't know every single detail about something that took place 21 years ago. So first of all, we weren't actually talking about intent at this point. We were talking about proving whether or not there was a marked difference with a specific bias as to who was affected by this. If you all can Google it, you can take a look at the butterfly ballot. If you look carefully, the very topmost position was the Republican.
No, I do not watch Mike from PA.
George Bush and Dick Cheney. Right below that was the Democratic ticket, Al Gore and Joe Lieberman. However, in spite of the fact that the Al Gore and Joe Lieberman position, the text was second in the list downwards, they were the third notch to mark. So that discrepancy in a state with a disproportionately high number of elderly people led to a clear favorability bias. People who wanted to vote for George Bush had a clear lineup. The hole for George Bush was right next to the text for George Bush, just right there, clean and simple. However, for the Al Gore Democratic ticket, it was the second text aligned with the third point. So this is a way in which a tiny edit to the format
is still aligned. That's not true.
Vaush might be correct that the format did result in a worse outcome, but that doesn't mean malicious intent is the cause.
There's an arrow pointing.
Yeah, there's a text that's still aligned. It's just not true.
Wait, hold on.
Is this still aligned? I'd have to see it.
It's so funny to me to hear.
It's just mind reading.
Hold on. We're not talking about whether or not an average person could figure this out. We're talking about did this.
Nobody is defending butterfly ballots as a good thing. The idea is, so basically the entire conversation right now, since I assume you just clicked on here, Vaush is claiming that butterfly ballots came as a result of a conspiracy between Jeb Bush and George Bush, the governor of Florida, when that isn't true. A Democrat from the area they were done in, she designed butterfly ballots, and she's the reason it happened. The local Democratic Party did this. But Vaush is alleging a big conspiracy, like I said, a big conspiracy between Jeb and George.
Lead to a statistically significant number of Democrats misvote in this case. In this case,
we're talking about if it was intentionally set.
No, right now we were actually talking about whether or not there was a statistically significant impact.
Can you prove either? How do you know that there's a statistically whatever you said about the Democrats being disproportionately affected? How do you know that?
Okay, allow me to read. This is from an article from The Guardian. Everyone buckle up. This is not exactly new information.
Can we just take this for granted instead of listening to Vaush?
So make a claim, but it's obvious.
I mean, right now they're making Vaush prove that they're breaking it down right now. So right now they want him to prove that there was discrepancy in data, and then they can move on. They already went through if it was intentional. So now they're breaking it down piece by piece.
No.
It's just okay.
Yeah, okay, no. So there's plenty of documentation.
Maybe she is. We gotta look her up. She was a Republican in 1996, and then she was a Democrat in 2000. Fishy.
Votes
Maybe
in
she
some
knew.
counties that otherwise would have been in a very, very, very close election. So I can demonstrate that there was a clear bias in who was affected by this. First and foremost, what were we even on? I don't even remember what
This
this
is
was
the thing.
broadly in
You
service of.
have
It's
to
just so
prove
many
that this
stupid
was-
points,
okay.
line after line after line.
Your argument here has changed. Your initial claim was that this was an intentionally designed and implemented thing to target specific voters.
Yes.
That this was intentional. Yes.
I believe
but-
that is the case.
but
Now, you
you are
can't prove
backing up.
intent unless they admit it, but I believe that is
No,
the
you
case.
prove with
yes.
circumstantial evidence. I mean, usually intent is proved with circumstantial evidence. And
That
what
is
is
usually the best you can do unless you get a confession. You usually have to infer intent from the likelihood that people would have engaged in other types of behavior could they have.
This ain't
Now,
it,
in this
though.
case, this is
No,
very
it's mind reading.
In this case, no, that's not mind reading. It's the opposite. It's actually the type of behavior that literally anybody. It's the type of behavior that literally anybody would engage in. It was their job to determine whether or not somebody meant to do something. If you're at all familiar with the criminal justice field,
Vaush
this
is right about
stuff.
that.
Yeah.
Vaush is
So
right about
with
that.
regards to the butterfly ballot, I
He's talking about mind reading in the fucking.
this is an
ballot.
unprecedentedly badly designed ballot. I mean, truly, like astonishingly badly designed. And it just so happened to be rolled out in a way that favored one candidate over another in a swing state, in a state that was run by, the brother of the candidate. Now, nobody's come out with any signed confessions. I admit to that. I don't think I ever said that they had. I can't prove intent. What I can say is that I think there is substantial evidence. Now, I know that there is substantial evidence because this has been a hardline Democratic and even moderate-leaning talking point for a long time. So what we're arguing right now feels like I feel like it's past arguing gay marriage. I feel like I'm arguing gay adoption right now. If you'd all like, I can read up on this more, but I feel like I can link some articles in chat, but there's evidence that the design was abhorrent. There's evidence that the design favored Republicans for the way it was formatted. We know that Jeb Bush was the governor of the state. Like, if you really want to harp on this point unto infinity, if you really want to crucify me for not being able to prove intent like a literal mind reader, then I guess I'll accept that L.
There's a lot of 17 when that election went down, and everybody it was said it was confusing for everybody, Republican, Democrat alike, and so there's nobody that really overly benefited from this. I was a teenager when that went down, so I actually remember that election.
You have to link it to George W. Bush. You have to link it to George W. Bush.
Well, it's okay, but Vaush made the point, and I think this is crazy to me because I do think that this is a point that we all would agree with. Like, he said, like that he has a problem with this, like that he feels like something untoward happened. And I don't think I've ever before today like heard really people question whether or not there seemed like something untoward happened in that. The whole point of what was it's a far cry from fascism. And
the whole point
fascism thing so like fragmentally away from the original point at this point. I didn't expect we'd be arguing this. Allow me to one last thing, if I may, read the foreword on a Stanford business article. Okay, View publication. We show that the butterfly ballot used in Palm Beach County, Florida, in the 2000.
Bro, mail-in voting was implemented in Pennsylvania, and Republicans said something's up. I think that's enough evidence to say that there was a conspiracy between Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates to both divorce their wives in the same year.
Presidential election cost more than 2,000 Democratic voters to vote by mistake for reform candidate Pat Buchanan, a number larger than George W. Bush's certified margin of victory in Florida. We used multiple methods and
If Al Gore would have won, 9/11 might not have happened, actually. Didn't they ignore warning signs or something like that? That might be wrong. Don't quote me.
Pat Buchanan, a number larger than George W. Bush's certified margin of victory in Florida. We used multiple methods and several kinds of data to rule out alternative explanations for the vote Buchanan received in Palm Beach. This is 2001, by the way.
Here, I'll slow it down because the audio is getting kind of bad.
I'll
be right back.
Nobody is disagreeing.
I'm using the little boys' room, the potty, the bathroom, the restroom. What terminology do they use nowadays? It's not a bathroom because I'm not going to go to the bath. There is a bath in there, but I'm not going to bathe.
So we're mind reading those two things.
It's not about mind reading. Hold on.
Did I just hear Destiny say nobody's disagreeing, and then he's going to list the point that he was disagreeing with 5 minutes ago? Hit me with it, Destiny, please.
Okay, sure. Let me explain this one more time. I literally said word for word. Somebody go back and click.
The toilet. I'm going to the toilet.
But everybody agrees that there was funny business. Nobody is saying that there wasn't funny business. But the problem is that you are alleging a conspiracy. This is the exact same types of arguments that you have with insane Trump fanatics who will say things like this particular thing happened and the reason why was because there's a massive conspiracy behind it. So whether it's Fauci miscommunicating how we're supposed to use masks, or whether it was the WHO not getting the correct information out initially about the coronavirus. The problem is that you're taking this argument of something funny or something dumb or something that shouldn't have happened, which everybody, I think most people agree with that everything relating to the Florida ballot thing was fucked, and it probably led to some dumb shit happening, which is wrong. I don't know why you're saying, nobody disagrees with that. The problem is that
I'm just saying it was confusing for everybody.
He's interrupting me. Okay, holy shit. The problem is that you are alleging a conspiracy, and for some reason, Vaush doesn't seem to understand the difference between saying something bad happened and something bad happened that was intentionally caused by a group of malicious actors. And this is exactly what Trump people do, is they try to play fast and loose with these two things so that they can prove everybody on the other side is a malicious actor. And it's just very strange, like Mott and Bailey. So you'll argue with somebody that says, like, for instance, like the WHO is an evil, horrible actor. It's like, really? How do you know that? And it's like, well, they got this and this wrong. It's like, well, just because they got something wrong doesn't mean that they're being malicious on it. And it's the exact same here when we talk about the Florida recount, or whether we talk about any other number of things we're talking about. Just because there might have been something that was fucked up, or just because there might have been something that was wrong, there's a difference between saying something bad or wrong or dumb happened here versus going to the next level and saying there was a conspiracy here. That not a conspiracy,
I'd like
and
first
not
of
a
all, I'd like to
conspiracy
address
like, oh my God, like a conspiracy theory, something's horrible, but a conspiracy like there was a plan by a group of people that got together in some way to circumvent the law or do something unlawful or evil or horrible. That is the original claim that you made, that you have now acknowledged multiple times. We all thank you for it. You cannot substantiate it because you need to go back and read more or do whatever.
I can't actually prove intent like a mind reader.
So you want to say like prove intent by mind reader?
First of all, I'd like to acknowledge.
Watch like preach for like 20 minutes, okay? So
I would like to acknowledge that Destiny is backtracking here because initially he denied there was
Vaush, you gotta let him in. Vaush, buddy. Sorry, gotta let him in.
Okay, yeah, holy shit, because he railroads like a million points. Nobody's saying that intent has to be proved like a mind reader. Believe it or not, in the criminal justice system in the United States, we prove intent and shit all the time. And to my knowledge, I could be wrong, I don't believe we have any mind readers that work with the criminal justice system.
Intent.
So there are people that can infer intent, and they do it by more than just looking at a Twitter headline or looking at something bad that happened and saying like, oh, well, there must have been some intentional
all the
misstep here.
anti-lefty talking points.
There might have been some bad ballot design, which I think most people acknowledge, but unless you can literally give us a shred of evidence that there was some tomfoolery or some conspiracy that was arranged here, it's probably best to just take the L and move on to the next point.
Right. So first of all, I'd like to acknowledge the backtracking. So everyone here, well, not everyone, I'm sorry, but some people here, including Destiny, were saying multiple times that there was no evidence that there was any bias in how these butterfly ballots led to people misvoting. Destiny was saying, hold on. Destiny was, I just did. I read a Stanford article quote.
We should go buy some butterfly nets. We could take down these butterfly ballots we're hearing about. I got a lot of butterfly nests. We can go catch them, right?
I can link you the article if you want to read it.
Yeah, but the burden is on you to provide that.
Hold, please. Destiny even said, while chortling, he was saying, anyone could read this. It's aligned right there. So he was perfectly willing to imply that there was no actual negative outcome from the alignment of the butterfly ballot. Then I lay out the evidence that that's not the case, and now he backtracks off of that. Every time he makes a fallacious claim, he is willing to backtrack off of it to the previous
By the way, it was really smart for Vaush to turn the focus on if butterfly ballots are bad or not, because it takes away focus on if he's making up a random conspiracy theory about like why it was done.
Like he just tried to say, for example, that the courts prove intent, as if they're able to do that. No, they encourage it.
You do prove intent.
Okay, we'll all get there. So when you're talking about conspiracy, or when you're talking about whether or not politicians do things to, say, for example, favor their political allies, you usually have to use inference because very rarely do they openly admit to it. Here's another example where I'm willing to admit conspiracy or infer conspiracy where there's no direct evidence of such. The impeachment of Donald Trump, the first one, where the Republican senators voted to acquit overwhelmingly. And for some of them, like McConnell, they admitted beforehand that they were going to vote to acquit basically no matter what. The rest of them didn't do that. They just voted to acquit. Do I believe there was some kind of bias on the part of Republican senators to not consider the full facts of the case and instead to vote to acquit Donald Trump?
Bro, that's not the same thing at all. We have evidence of like it went through a process to get these things done. Unless if he's making the claim that the one Democrat who did it, the Democratic Party of this area was pressured or something, I guess you can make that claim, but we have like the receipts are there.
Some sort of favorability bias towards their own party. I do believe that. I can't prove it, but I do believe it because it explains their behavior well, and because I think they had intent, and I think they had motive, and I think they had ability. Now, with regards to the butterfly ballot thing, I have demonstrated all of the characteristics that would be sufficient in a criminal trial: the opportunity, the intent, the motive. I think it's sufficient. I've explained why. Hold on. There have been many bad faith efforts to
We're going Alex Jones territory here.
Like, for example, claiming that the butterfly ballots wouldn't have had an effect, a very stupid claim made by people unfamiliar with the evidence, which I rebutted.
I was alive during the election. I was a teenager. I remember it. Sorry,
please.
It was confusing for everybody.
Let him finish.
So
blew it on.
So we've run through all of that, and at this point, all Destiny really has to do is just run back to this. Well, explaining every element that would lead a person to engage in bias in favor of their brother is exactly the same as all of the flippant and provably false claims made by the Trump administration and their allies during the big lie, the election steal conspiracy. Again, this is anti-intellectual. It is not an actual consideration of the arguments or the case that I provided. He's tried to stop it at every point using arguments he's willing to back off later. There's no real discussion here, frankly.
It's actually real discussion.
More in the future, then you're totally free to. But at this point, I've demonstrated all of the components that I believe are sufficient to determine a person.
He hasn't even demonstrated one.
First of all,
turning the butterfly ballots game. Oh my God! Yeah,
but as long as this goes on, they're just not gonna. This is uncharitability to the point of delusion. If you can't mind read the intent of the people involved, then you don't have a shred of evidence. And you're
no one has said that,
conspiracy theorists.
So Vaush, first of all, you need to get off your high horse. People say prove intent all the time in the context of criminal intent. They say I have to prove mens rea, prove intent.
How do you prove intent?
With circumstantial evidence.
They do it all the time. Have you never heard first degree murder is literally intent? Like they do it all the time.
How do you determine intent?
This is circumstantial evidence. Okay,
Okay.
I'm trying to tell you this.
So if you determine intent, for example, by
there-
finding that a person did something that had a particular outcome to an outcome that they would have desired, and there wasn't any other explanation for their behavior.
Gosh, what I'm saying, you can't call out Destiny for saying prove intent because people use prove intent all the time. Number two, with regards to your study,
using prove intent by way of inferring it through circumstantial evidence, then I prove
his use of the word prove intent is not indication that he thinks that you have to have a mind reader. That is just common vernacular that people say prove intent. So just be clear there. Number two, on your study that you said, all that you quoted to me was that there's evidence that a sufficient number of Democratic ballots were in play such that they could have overturned the results of the election. Is that correct?
No, I said that there was a disproportionate bias towards Democrat voters voting by mistake.
What you read off though was that it was the Democrats, the absolute number of the ballots were off in such a quantity to affect.
So if you think about it
election, right?
math-wise, if there's a disparity caused by the butterfly ballots, and that disparity leads to Bush winning when Gore would have otherwise won, that is a disparity that was biased against the Democrats because it means more Democrats would have misvoted than Republicans.
Understood, but you could have had a situation in which certain butterfly ballots in certain areas and the way that they were administered were different. You don't have absolute knowledge of that.
Well, no, Pisco, we do have evidence of that.
SNE's still doing it in chat right now. He's saying nobody could be fooled by this ballot when I've already provided evidence that people were fooled by the ballot. He's not.
I'm just pushing back on this.
He's just bad. You're bad.
Real quick. I'm just pushing back on this point because you keep saying like it's impossible to read. I'll acknowledge.
Chat. Hey, did I ever say it's impossible to read?
Wait, didn't he literally say that verbatim?
No, I said that the average person could understand it.
Old people.
I'm pretty sure you've said a lot of the time, like, that's fine, blah, blah, blah. All I'm saying is that, look, it's not funny. It's funny because you're so fucking ass-fat. I've already acknowledged that there is, I guess, a good possibility that it could have been that so many people were confused or whatever. But just
then,
like,
then why do you keep implying?
I just put some. Wait a second.
You don't think that?
I'm not implying that. I know that you only literally can focus on rhetoric because your brain can only hold one idea at a time. The reason why I'm pushing back is because you keep repeating this talking point that it's like impossible. It wasn't impossible.
I never said that. I'm making it up in your head. You're
people can go back.
Are you debating Vaush?
Wait, okay.
You know what I am? You know what I am, Will? I'm a mix between Destiny, Kyle Kalinske, Vaush, but not Mike from PA. I'm a mix between those three people. Plus, I actually do real life politics, policy stuff. I hate every political ideology. I hate every label. I'm not a capitalist or a socialist. I don't give a shit. I've debated Destiny on topics. I've disagreed with Vaush this entire time. I think Vaush and Destiny are both babies, little babies. The true king of the internet, in my mind, has to be
then you agree that like most reasonable people can read it, right? Maybe some older people.
I literally said that. I literally said the average person can read it, but it's statistically significant. I know you weren't listening. Are there any other points you want me to clarify?
He did say that. I was in the middle of a point.
I just want to make clear that he did say that.
Very bad faith.
I just want to say that, to be clear, that he did talk about like how difficult it was for old people. Not that it was. At least I don't remember him saying specifically impossible.
If I may, I just want to note it for the record. I think I literally said the average person could read this and understand, but the layout was confusing enough to lead a statistically significant number of people to alter their votes. A claim which is backed up by the evidence. But he's running around in chat. This is so hard to read, guys. It's obvious that he doesn't actually care about which points are proven or disproven, which are valid or invalid. He's just mad and he wants to hold me to anything that he can, even if it's something he's already backed off of.
Okay. Pisco. I was just addressing this point to you like earlier. What I was trying to tell you is that these ballots were specifically distributed in Democratic counties, so it did significantly impact them more so. Like there's evidence for that. Like it's crazy because the ballot was actually created by a Democrat. Like it was created by a Democrat, proved by Republicans, literally disseminated in Democratic places.
That would put a pattern practice not to the ballot itself. So one would be sort of the ballot itself.
The ballot itself was a little bit in question, and it seemed like it was intentionally distributed specifically in these counties. This is crazy to me. I feel like we've gone so far down this rabbit hole that people are literally.
I don't even know we're arguing. It's one. I meant to be off an hour ago. Do we have any final points we want to make?
I don't think.
You think George Bush did it? You think George Bush actually did it?
Wait, really quickly. I don't think anyone here disagrees with the idea that Jeb Bush, or I'm sorry, that George W. Bush winning that election, that there was something that was untoward happening here. Like this, I really thought we all agreed there. Can we just all?
We all agree. Yeah, it was dumb. There was dumb shit happening.
Probably won.
If those ballots had been made a different way, it's entirely possible, if not likely, that we would have had a Democrat.
Or would have won.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, as long as we're all clear there. I just don't see where it's fascist, but that's a whole other thing.
Okay.
Well, the issue is that
we got away from the point. Like, what is fascism?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, as long as we're all clear there. I just don't see where it's fascist, but that's a whole other thing.
Okay.
Well, the issue is that
we
Vaush
didn't
is
even
contending
get
that
to
you've
that.
given enough evidence, circumstantial or otherwise,
wanna
that
hear
it was
it.
a conspiracy. That's what we were
All
disagreeing
right,
on.
here it is.
So again, since nobody here in all the times I've asked it has managed to supply another explanation for why a highly deceptive, completely irregular, and hold on, an unprecedented ballot that just so happened to favor the candidate that was the brother of
Was
the
made
governor
by
at the time,
Democrat?
and hold on, please, and was distributed specifically in Democratic counties, like, unless we can find a better explanation
Because
for that,
Democrats
incompetence does not sufficiently
implemented it. It was in Democratic counties because Democrats did it. That's why it was in Democratic counties. God, dude.
describe that, okay?
Incompetence super describes it. Number
It does
one.
not. That is so for me. So this could be my bias.
Number two.
I didn't get to finish my point again.
You did. You finished your point, and now
No,
you're
I
mad because
didn't. I got interrupted. You probably couldn't tell because you weren't listening.
you can't just say because I can't find another explanation, therefore conspiracy. That is like every
wait, hold
Trump's
on.
like go-to
So,
argument. Like
no,
I can't think
actually-
of why this is reported incorrectly. Must be a conspiracy between the media. Must be a conspiracy.
Actually,
between the Jews,
not
must be
being
a
able to
conspiracy
find
between the
another
WHO.
explanation for a person's behavior is actually a really strong indicator of potential intent. So, for example, I'll give you an example to this, okay? If you wanted to arrest a person for attempted murder, okay, and they had a gun in their pocket and they were walking through an alleyway towards their ex-girlfriend's house after posting threatening text messages, the fact that there's no other reasonable explanation for them doing that, walking through that alley towards their ex-girlfriend's apartment with a gun in hand, is actually a really strong indicator towards their intent. So, yes,
I agree, but you
actually,
fucked yourself there, Vaush, because in your example, they sent threatening text messages. So I'm asking you, what is the equivalent to the threatening text messages? There is none here. You don't have the
even
intent at all.
okay, wait, hold on. Not a direct one-to-one example with every individual element. Even if there weren't threatening text messages, if, for example, the ex-boyfriend was standing outside the ex-girlfriend's apartment just staring at her with a gun in hand, if there's no better explanation for him being out there with a gun in hand, that could lend much more credibility to the idea that he's doing something with potential nefarious intent. This is very, very self-evident stuff. We can take away the text messages. Wait, let me, please. I'm only responding to one bad faith point at a time.
Oh my
So,
God.
hold on. So, yes, actually, not being able to find an alternative explanation is often used in court to determine components of intent. This is, again, if you knew anything about this. So, with regards
you're
to,
so
with
condescending,
regards,
and you're not giving an equivalent like
Bush,
analogy. Like you're literally saying like standing outside with a gun, staring at his ex-girlfriend.
Actually,
like there's
the
no
goal of that-
equivalent to
the
this.
goal-
to
the
the
goal of
hanging
that
shot thing.
analogy. So the goal of that analogy was actually to demonstrate that if a person
I want Pisco to talk a little bit because I know he knows a lot more than like he can probably do this argument more effectively than Destiny. But Destiny has the bigger platform and he's more aggressive, so he's going to be able to get all the words out, talking over like Vaush because Vaush is being really drawn out here. But I think Pisco would be able to really, talk about this piece by piece in a way that is actually productive. But sadly, we're not getting that.
engages in suspicious behavior, or if there's a suspicious outcome to that behavior, and there's not any other explanation to that behavior but malintent, that can be used in a component of determining, well, malintent. So hold on, wait, please. I can't. Wait, hold on. I literally, Prime Case, I need to defer to you because I literally can't make the point because I'm responding to one rebuttal after one rebuttal after one rebuttal.
I would agree.
I need to finish this,
You
okay?
haven't finished.
So I believe I have sufficiently demonstrated, and again, anyone who knows anything about the court system would know this, that being able to find an alternate explanation for behavior plays in hugely to inferring intent. So since nobody here can provide an explanation that is to me more convincing than Jeb Bush wanted to help his brother win the election, to explain the astonishing bias that was demonstrated in the unprecedented formatting of the butterfly ballots, which were discriminately distributed.
Stop.
Please.
Stop.
I feel like I'm listening to a Force the Voter. It's really upsetting, dude. Come on, Vaush.
That, to me, is pretty suspicious. And to me, the most convincing explanation is malintent. Far more convincing than competence. And if, after all of that, if Destiny and his fans are so willing to try to own the left that they'll walk back in
Okay,
position...
cut him off and make it to the next person. If he's gonna...
Owning the left has nothing to do here. Now Vaush is going into the personal bias with Destiny's community, which his community is cringy, but you're not talking about that right now. All the people that just hate the left are cringy, but like it makes Vaush look so bad when he brings that up out of nowhere. That's such a bad, like optically, oh my god, dude, it makes him look so bitter.
But yeah, don't waste time on this.
After, and this is after he's talking about these, this conspiracy, and somebody being dumb. That's literally what happened. A Democrat was dumb. A Democrat implemented a dumb way to do ballots, and it hurt Democrats in the end. That literally is what happened. And I'm surprised nobody is bringing that up right now, because it's pretty easy to Google.
If there's like 10 other people that want to talk, don't like sit here and
Destiny brought it up a little bit.
cut him off and make it to the next person. If he's just gonna don't waste time on this. If there's like 10 other people that want to talk, don't like sit here and do like 2 minutes of ad hominem. It's fucking rude to everybody else on the panel. You're wasting everybody else's time.
Then they're
Just go to the
willing
next
to
person. Go to the next person.
Yeah, that's true. Prime isn't really moderating this well. Didn't somebody say that Dylan Burns made that criticism too?
So okay, but who has? All right, so Vaush is asking. For
I was almost done.
Vaush is asking for something very specific. Vaush, he wants an explanation, right?
Wait, please, I have to go. I meant to go an hour 12 minutes ago. The only point that I'm trying to finish on here is that I feel like I feel like people who are arguing against the principles that I've argued here are either uninformed on the facts.
Okay, can we just go to the next? If it's just going to be an ad-hom, just go to the next people. Prime. This is a waste of time. If he's just going to be like,
what do you guys want to bet Destiny's going to leave after I leave? Because he's had his fun. Anyway,
dude, Prime, who's been on the show more? Me or Vaush? Prime, who's been here more? Me
Destiny does go on here a lot.
or Vaush?
Okay.
Who's randomly jumped on the show more? Me or Vaush?
Okay.
I appreciate you
Dad,
having
stop
me on.
fighting. All right. Okay. Thank you.
I want an answer to that. I want an answer. Who's randomly jumped on the show more?
Destiny, you love me more. Destiny, you love me more.
Okay. I'll speak to Vaush before he leaves, though.
Prime, I'm trying to say bye to Prime, though. Come on.
Okay.
He's hosting all this.
Okay.
Prime, love you very much. Have fun on the panel. Good luck with all this. Next time, I promise I'll stream. Okay.
Okay.
I loathe leaving because I feel like Vaush is running, but I've been here for 3 hours and I generally sleep.
Bring me presents next time, and I'll love you just as much. Okay. All right.
Wait, where do you have a PO box? I'll send you brownies. Okay.
I'll send you an address.
Wait.
Sure. All right.
Vaush is running for me.
Good
luck.
Vaush,
I'm running from all of you. Good luck. Huh?
Josh, can you accept when people invite you onto the panels? Because sometimes we try to make panels so that you could come to, but then sometimes you don't answer. So then if you could answer, then
I'm
we could do this.
sorry.
Ooh, she calling you out.
I'm bad at social media.
Okay. Well, answer my messages as the producer that helps put things together. Then maybe you don't need to like have 15 other people yelling at you. You know?
Can you re-message me?
Patron is like,
Okay.
stop leaving me on red.
Okay, re-message me and I'll respond so
got
quick
you.
it'll make your head spin. Okay.
Okay. Great.
I'm ready. Thank you.
Hey, good luck.
All right.
Good luck.
So Destiny.
So
all right. So Jeshu Gambit, go ahead, and then I want Destiny. You can respond. Say anything you want. You can add hom if you want. You can do anything you want. But if you're here, hit that follow button. God fucking damn it! So much goddamn content. At least hit the follow button. All right, Jeshu.
Prime, how long ago did you?
Jeshu.
Yeah, so I just want to tell Vaush that this is what happens when you disagree with me. I'm usually the most based person on earth. So if you come to a panel disagreeing with me, you're gonna get dogpiled. But the thing that I wanted to point out to him that was incoherent is that his belief that Florida did something when there was a Democrat who made this ballot, he would have to believe that she was conspiring with the Democrats to make his point coherent. Like, not only
100%. The people that could have made the most cutting attacks at Vaush didn't get to talk. I don't think Destiny was effective at all in the way he approached attacking Vaush. Part of it was because Vaush would yell like, "Oh, you're trying to own the left," when he would try to talk. But also, I think Pisco and other people could have done it better. The panel's too big. American Nacho, I think that's it. Yeah, that's his name. He usually doesn't have anything to add. He doesn't have anything to add. She doesn't have anything to add. Pisco, Gambit. Those two on a panel. We'll put Vaush on there. This can work, all right? So we can have Destiny, Pisco, and Gambit against Vaush, Kyle Kalinske, and Jimmy Dore. So Vaush, Kyle Kalinske, and Jimmy Dore can all argue how there was a big conspiracy in Florida. Both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party conspired to help George Bush win. Because Democrats are bad, so Jimmy Dore can argue that. Kyle Kalinske can argue that as well. Vaush can say how George Bush and Jeb Bush actually conspired together to make it happen. And then Destiny and GSU and Pisco can talk. I want to see Jimmy Dore on a debate panel. Do you know how good that'd be? Do you know how entertaining that would be? Anyway, I'm gonna log off for tonight. We hit the midnight bell. Vaush is gone. All the drama's gone. Bad debate. 0 out of 10. Fascism out of socialism. That's what I rate this score. I think the best panels are Hans of Harkir, of course. Good night, y'all. Here's the Discord. Here you go. See you in Discord. We can chat on there. We can play Rocket League a different night. I gotta debate some Tom McDonald supporters in the coming week. I'm excited. It's always excited or it's always exciting to debate Tom McDonald supporters. Hans, that's where I'm gonna be on. That's when I'm gonna be on Friday. Nobody else likes me, so I have to go on only Hans's panels, which is good because he has the best panels ever done in American history. So, dating all the way back to the founding of our country in 1619. All right. Good night. Oh shit. Goodbye. Oh wait, there was one person on Twitch? No way. All right. Ugh. You're insane. You are actually crazy, cockeyed rooster. Holy crap. Thank you so much for 20 gee, you're crazy. $20. Holy crap. You're getting a new job soon, so my hours are changing. Good luck with your new channel. Hans's channel name. Here's Hans's channel. Here. All right. Everybody have a good one. Yeehaw! Oh wait, I did not stop it. Here. Now I'm gonna do it. Oh hi. Into the wanna what? Into the wannabe. How you doing? Thank you for hanging out on Twitch.